Committee of the whole come to order. Does anybody know if Mr. Spencer will be here? Have you heard from him? No? Okay.
I don't know, hadn't heard.
Well, I hope he's doing well, because the first part of this is going to be about him. There's been some issues raised about a trip that a group of city councilmen were going to make to St. Louis. It's a trip that Mr. Townsend and I have been on before together, and we advertised it ahead of time. But if the issue is going to be raised before we go, it'll probably still be there while we're gone and after we get back. So what I've decided to do here publicly is to ask Mr. Johnson and Mr. Townsend to join me and not go on the trip. The trip was my idea. It was my genesis. I was very, very excited about what we found in St. Louis when we went on that trip 2 years ago. There was 5 city councilmen that went then. And Dr. Pratt, Mr. Townsend, myself, and 2 others. And so, anyway, the main idea is I wanted to get the mayor up there to see him. He's still going to go, and he's got his staff with him. And I hope that Mr. Spencer, as chair of the CRA, will still represent this body at large. So, that's said. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have some cards for comments?
Do we have the cards? Mr. Guerrero will probably put it up, but if you just want to speak, Ms. Dupson, please come on.
Yes. Well, thank you for making the public aware of that. I'm a little disappointed that the 3 of you won't be joining the mayor, because I believe that the group that's up there is expecting all of you who were registered, and I understand they went to a lot of problem to set things up to accommodate the size group that was going.
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate that it is being viewed in the way it negatively apparently is coming up to you, because when McCormick, Barnes, Salazar, whatever their name is, I never get it correctly, when they were here in 2009, they had some really exciting concepts that they shared with the city, and I think particularly Mr. Spencer and Mr. Townsend's districts would have benefited greatly had they been able to engage, and hopefully they still will. But it's a little bit disconcerting to me as a citizen that because someone says something to the negative in advance of a trip, you folks would cancel out, when in fact it's been weeks and weeks of preparation, going into it. So I'm just, as a citizen, I'm disappointed that
I'm disappointed too. So
well, and I think the disrespect to the group up there who have planned to have as many of you there as are not going to be there should be noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dupson. Ms. Myers, and then yes.
Well, first of all, I don't know whether I'm disappointed or not. It may or may not have been a good idea, but I certainly have a lot of questions I would like to have had the opportunity to discuss. It may have been a great idea. It still may be a great idea. I don't know, because I did not have the opportunity as a council to discuss the trip, the purpose of the trip, who should go to represent the council. So I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm glad you're not going, or I'm not. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I was going to ask some questions. But since you've apparently decided that you're not going anyway, I assume. I don't know about the others, but that's my position. I would like to.
And if that's the way we want to go, we can do that. I mean, if next time we get a travel request in from Ms. DeWeese, I can run it by the whole council, and nobody will travel from council unless we discuss it among all of us. Next time, Dr. Wu, who I signed 2 or 3 travel documents for him a month, Maybe I could discuss that before the whole council, but I didn't see the need. The reason I picked the 3 other councilmen besides myself is because they all represent the CRA. And there was a special circumstance involving Dr. Pratt. I talked to her briefly about it. We did talk business. It couldn't be a sunshine violation because we weren't going to be discussing business about it. And but she had already been up there. And so I think she was disappointed in not going, but that was my decision. So anything that was good or bad about this trip rests on my shoulders. So anyway, it won't be an issue now. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I wasn't going to share my opinions at all today about this, but Ms. Dubuisson brought up a good point in that I would be really concerned about the reaction that McCormick Salazar would have. I know that we've worked for many years to get them interested in Pensacola. I know Mr. Thaddeus Cohen also had worked with him in his architecture professional side and really was excited about them having interest in us. So if that's going to at all detract from the ongoing relationship we're developing, we should find our way through this. You know, I think it's an overreaction to say you have to bring everything to council for travel requests. This is a little bit bigger than that because it has to do with big decisions that we're going to make as a council on how to redevelop certain areas of the city. So if later in the meeting you choose to bring it back up and we talk about this, maybe we can find our way through it.
Okay, good. Thanks. Dr. Pratt.
I just wanted to weigh in. I think that it would be valuable for the rest of you to go, the ones who you're suggesting would stay. Even if nothing comes of it, I think that it is a good opportunity to think about alternative ideas. I enjoyed the trip when we went previously, and it was very informative, and it's a good group of people who know their stuff. So I would encourage you to reconsider. Maybe just having you go along would be beneficial if the others feel uncomfortable. But I think it's a good effort to keep the relationship with this group. And but you are more aware of the agenda for the meeting and such. So if in that context you've made that decision, I'm sorry that is the decision that's been made, but I respect your decision.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Greer, the cards back there, yellow cards, I meant cards. This is the part of the meeting called the Boyd Forum. If there's something you'd like to say before council, try to keep your remarks to 1 minute. Please feel free to come up. And in the absence of the cards, just make your way to the microphone. They're there in the back on the table. Yes, don't see anybody moving towards those. And I hope everybody got a copy of the revised agenda. We have no council actions right now, so Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item on the agenda is award of bid number 12-011, FY 2012 Port Maintenance Dredging Project. The recommendation is that City Council award a contract for port maintenance dredging to Orion Marine Construction Incorporated, the lowest and most responsible bidder in the amount of $506,434.05, plus a 10% contingency for port maintenance dredging.
Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just the only concern I have, we stipulate the lowest and responsible bid, but in looking at the variance and the significant, what I consider significant difference among the five, if you will, specifically the one that we're selecting, then there's something like $200,000 or $300,000 difference. I'm just concerned about the constant continuation of contingencies that are coming in. Are there any expectation that there will be additional contingencies, or are we satisfied that with this low bid that the job will be done to our satisfaction?
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend. I'll have the port director come in to address that in a few seconds, but I guess I would start out by saying, in general, anytime we have a proposal that goes out and then we get bids back on those proposals, anytime that you have such wide disparities, it initially makes you wonder if everything was taken into consideration. The key part of that, though, is, however, is that ultimately it is the bidder's responsibility to make that happen. Now, there are always opportunities for unforeseen contingencies, and those, if they are truly unforeseen, then those will be things that we take into the determination. But if it is a bid like this, where the chances for unforeseen contingencies are not as big as it would be, for example, if you have a street project and you have unmarked water lines or something under it that obviously can impact, well, that clearly makes a difference. But the bottom line is that the bid price is the bid price, and that's what we are accepting. And I'll ask Clyde to come on up and see if he has any clarifications he'd like to present on the issue as well.
I'm happy. I just thought I'd bring that up, and noting, that what I thought was a disparity in terms of numbers, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Townsend, just briefly, our contract engineer has worked with this particular company a lot in the past and is very comfortable that they're going to do a good job for us at the price that they've quoted.
I'm happy.
Okay, anybody else on the committee? From the audience? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item number 2 is Audit Selection Committee. The recommendation is that City Council appoint a council member representative to participate in the Audit Selection Committee.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. I guess you're looking for a nomination today, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, all right. So, floor is open for, actually, let's pull that motion and just go to naming somebody.
Nominate Ms. Mary DeWeese.
Ms. DeWeese. Ms.
Second.
DeWeese. We have a motion and a second. Any other
I
nominations?
just have a comment, maybe after we discharge this, just in terms of how this committee is set, since the audit function falls under the council. I guess I would think that it might make sense for, it makes sense to have the CFO be involved, but I would think it would make sense for us as a council to consider whether we would like to ask to appoint the citizen appointee as well, since it is a council sort of function as opposed to an administrative function. That just, nothing against Councilwoman DeWeese for this part of it, but.
Okay. Ms. DeWeese.
That was one of my questions as well, because it is a council audit, that function that's being done, that the logic of, I believe this is the first time it's been bid out in many, many, many years or even decades. So I'd like to hear the logic on that. And then also to find out if we just need one council representative, since it is a committee, if it's a notice meeting and open to the public, if there should be 2. So I'm not sure we're ready to decide today if we can't answer those questions.
Okay. You got any comment on that, Mr. Reynolds?
Mr. Barker can comment on the members of the council, Mr. President.
And as far as the members of the committee here, let's, if you've got any comments on it, let's just kind of open it up for a conversation and take the chair out of it just for a moment, and let's just see how we want to proceed for this, because this is one of the things that's left us under the charter. So, Mr. Barker?
Yes, sir. My only comments are that this committee item is a result of an item that went to council in February, where council took action for the selection committee. And what we're asking for today is that the city council appoint a member consistent with action that you took back in February, a member of council in order to sit on the committee. And listening to what some of the council have said, of course, we would, based on prior council action, you have suggested that a citizen sit on there. Currently, it will be myself sitting on it, Mandy Bills, a citizen appointed by the mayor, and then whoever council appoints today, unless you should change that. But the RFP has been put on the street, and we have had the pre-RFP conference with the firms, and so we just want to go ahead and get on record who the council person's going to be. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
I still have the question about the mayor appointing a citizen and what the logic in that was, and
Okay.
not council appointing. That was the other question. I don't know who can answer that.
I do think that's something Mr. Reynolds ought to address.
Well, I think it's, once again, we're back in old familiar territory. You have a leader of this form of government, which is the mayor. You have the council that has its role and responsibilities as well.
But it's the mayor being audited, though, really.
Well, but what you have is input from the leadership of this organization in regards to who's selected for the audit. It's absolutely nothing in regards to the auditing process itself. You know, this ultimately is a call that you know, if this council has issues with the members of the committee, then we can restructure to the committee to however the council wants. But it is a function of council for the audit, but I would hope that you would want to be more inclusive as opposed to exclusive.
Well, personally, I don't have a problem with it, Mr. Reynolds. I just think it's something that deserves to be discussed and questioned. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the mayor can have the appointee. In fact, I'd welcome it. But I do think it's a decision for council on that. So whether we go with Mr. Weiss or somebody else on the committee, I think the exact structure of it belongs to us. I favor having the mayor be included in on that selection process. But
And I would say that I think that it makes perfect sense for there to be some staff involvement because they know the stuff. We don't know the details of it. But I think that in this case, you know, the mayor has the same citizens as we do. And so I think we might not need to go through the whole formal nomination process that we've done in the past. But you know, maybe we just get some citizens on a ballot for next time. And it's not being critical of the mayor, but you know, there are people we can turn up that he might not have known that would be good finds out there that, you know, and he can clearly suggest names as well. I just think that it opens the door to a more inclusive kind of selection if we put that out there and you know, he's welcome to call any of us and say, hey, so-and-so would be great, and we can just pop that person on, and it would make it, I think we can turn up people who might not have been turned up before.
yes, sir.
Well, you know, we have a tendency to want to take a variance from the charter. My opinion is that if the charter stipulate a certain thing in terms of selection, that's the way it should be. I don't see the need to deviate every time we would want to for the satisfaction of whomever. If the charter say that the mayor's supposed to have an appointment, let's do it. If the charter says the council is supposed to make this, do this audit, let's do it. Why are we deviating to any certain extent? If we are going to be governed by the charter, let's be governed by the charter. And that would be my opinion.
I agree as well, Councilman Hall. Mr. President, you brought up the point of it remaining independent. And although I'm for inclusion of all parties, I think to make sure that there is a line of independence there and that it is not clouded, that be a council consideration. Certainly, as Dr. Pratt said, nominations from the mayor, if they want to do that through council members, that would be appropriate, and that we affirm that citizen as well.
Ms. Myers?
I agree with Councilwoman DeWeese, but is there a motion?
Do you need a motion?
Well, there's a motion.
There is a motion to have you represent us on this selection process. And that is the motion before us. So do you want to dispose of that, or we can withdraw the motion? I thought this was kind of settled back in February, but apparently not.
Who made the original? I know I second the motion. I'll withdraw
Mr.
my
Townsend.
I'll withdraw my second.
I'll pull a motion
Okay.
that's need be until you get some clarification of what you're going to do.
So this isn't the first time we visited this.
the charter does not specify, does not speak to the audit, does it? But it does say that the council has the authority to appoint boards, commissions, and authorities. That's specifically in the charter, but it does not speak to specifically an audit committee. I think that's a policy decision. I'm looking at our attorney.
Right, I'm with you so far, Councilman.
I mean, the charter doesn't speak to the council's authority to conduct an audit and how that process would work. So we're talking about really a policy decision here, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I would have to look at the RFP to see the basis for this, but the charter also imposes on the mayor the duty to keep the city council fully advised as to the financial condition and future needs of the city, and also to submit to the city council and make available to the public a complete report of the finances and administrative activities of the city at the end of each fiscal year. So, I don't know whether or not we want to get bogged down in a debate, but I presume that in the past that might have been a council function, but it's not specifically identified in the charter.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because Mr. Thompson had raised that issue, and I don't remember it being specifically addressed in the charter.
No, and I mean, if someone would point that out, if they know of it, I'll be glad to take a look at it, but I've reviewed it, and I don't think the word audit literally is in the charter.
I think we have the right to inquire into any department or function, I think is how it's worded, or financial matter. That's where it comes from.
I think the audit idea has come up as part of our responsibility, partially because of the oversight of financial stuff, and audits are clearly a way to provide oversight. And so, and this year, for instance, in our budget, the audit is under the council, and so that's sort of been the direction we've been going with it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's important to recognize that this is an issue that both the mayor and city council have a responsibility for. And what we're asking, or what the proposal in front of you is today, is to find the representative for the council, and then the mayor. It's not the mayor that will be sitting at the table to make the selection. It is someone from the community then that will have that opportunity, and the mayor will simply be the person selecting that. To suggest that the mayor has no role in this process, I think, is not quite correct. Clearly, the mayor has the ultimate responsibility, as the city attorney has outlined to this group, and again, his actions are to simply provide a citizen appointment to that process.
And part of my concern, if we isolate the mayor's office and function in this too much, is that then it will fall to the city council on the entire process of the selection and in the administration of such. And we still don't have a staff yet. So I would hope that at least for this selection process, we would be open and inclusive of the mayor's participation in that, even selecting, a citizen to participate on that. But I still felt like it needed to be discussed. Dr. Proud.
Thank you. And I would say that the mayor does have a role because he's appointing the director of finance and a staff member to this, so that the administration is well represented. And it's been alluded to the February decision, and so I've pulled it up on the website because it wasn't included, but says it would consist of director of finance, one staff member, one member of city council, and one citizen. At that point, we didn't say it would be a mayor appointee or a council appointee, and so that's why I'm raising it today. I guess I hadn't thought it would be a mayoral appointee, particularly since it sort of felt, just my grammatical analysis of it, I thought it was within the council side of that sentence. But I think, I mean, I'm not raising this as ooh, I don't trust the mayor to pick a good citizen. I just think both groups, the mayor and the council, can pick citizens, and I think that we have the advantage in some sense of finding people that he might not. There are 9 of us who have email lists to contact and things like that. Why not tap us as a resource of people who know this community, different people, and so that's the only reason. I don't think he's going to pick this evil citizen who.
Have you seen the dearth of people that we recommend, for boards, and it's just incumbent, and without us even filling some vacancies, and we have that opportunity many times. So I'm not sure how much difference that would make.
No, but I guess I'm just saying, why not give it a chance? And he has every opportunity to call any one of us and say, hey, the person I think would be great would be so-and-so. And so I'm not saying we would exclude his input on this.
Okay. Ms. Myers, Dr. Wu.
Well, I certainly don't see any reason why the mayor shouldn't have input, but I think the final selection of a private citizen should be with the council. I look at this audit selection committee, and I'm asking, whose committee is this? The charter clearly says that the council has the authority to appoint committees and authorities, and anyway, there's a third. So if this is the is this audit selection committee a committee of the city council or a committee of the mayor? I believe should be a committee of the city council, and the city council should appoint a citizen. However, I see no reason why the mayor can't have input into that. He may pick somebody that we would approve of.
Okay. Well, we need to do something here, and so we can move on. We spent entirely too much time on this. Dr. Wu?
I think the dilemma we find ourselves in here is that we're all approaching it on how we feel. And again, going back to an issue that we had not long ago, is this is a legal issue. It's not a question of how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
What we're setting now is precedents that's going to be followed for the next 10, 20 years. And one side is saying A has the responsibility, the other side saying B has responsibility. Well, to me, what I want to know is legally, what does the charter say that we have? And I think that's what Councilman Townsend so eloquently was trying to say. It says the charter specifies things, and that's what we're supposed to follow. But what we need to do is get a reading on, does the charter say A or B? I have personal feelings, but my personal feelings have nothing to do with legally what we should do.
Okay, let's let Mr. Gerald's speak first.
Where am I? Well, Section 5.05, City Boards, Commissions, and Authorities. A, Establishment. Unless otherwise provided by law, the City Council shall establish or terminate by ordinance such boards, commissions, and authorities as it may deem advisable from time to time. B, Membership and Removal. Unless otherwise provided by law, City Council shall determine procedures, membership, and removal from city boards, commissions, and authorities. What does that mean?
Ms. Deweese?
Since we don't have a motion on the floor, can we move this to a discussion item? It can still be acted upon since it was properly noticed, but that way we can move on and put it after our 6-month financial report.
Okay, let's do that. That's fine. Okay, item number 3, sir.
Item number 3 is HealthWorks Incorporated Agreement Amendment Number 1. The recommendation is that City Council authorize the mayor to execute Amendment Number 1 to the lease and operating agreement of HealthWorks Incorporated.
Now, did you get the amendment at your places today on that? Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much. Is the time left on this then 9 years, if I'm reading this correctly, if it's 10 plus 5 plus 5, so that's a 20-year lease. So if it started in '01, then I think the year is 2012. That would leave 9 years left on this, Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to ask, let's see, I guess, Dan? Yeah, Dan is here, and Dan Brown with the airport, who will be discussing this matter. Thank you.
That is correct, sir.
So there'd be 9 years left, so the actual cost, I think over that 9 years that the city coffers will be losing as far as revenues, would be between $60,000 and $70,000 if we grant this reduction in leased helicopter space. Is that correct?
That is correct, but we're currently working on an additional lease for HeliWorks on the east side of the airport.
We're currently working on, repeat that, I'm sorry.
They're looking at relocating their operation to the east side of the airport, and we're currently working on an item with them on that.
So, okay. When will that be back before council? That issue, when will that lease be before council then?
It's probably going to be about a month or two before we're at that point.
A month or two, so we're going to reduce revenues. We got something for us in a month or two. I'm going to vote against this today. I'm just getting concerned about reductions. We've got a lease in place right now that we've granted a sublease, and until we get something in front of us that's going to meet the shortcomings that this is going to manufacture, it's going to be very hard for me to vote on any reductions in our budget, any revenues for our budget at this time. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Thank you.
Anyone else? Audience? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that passes on a 8-1 vote. Mr. Johnson dissenting. Item number 4, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item number 4 is Downtown Improvement Board Economic Development Incentive Program. The recommendation is that City Council authorize the forgiveness of the balance of a loan made from the city to the Downtown Improvement Board in 2009 for the purpose of accomplishing necessary repairs at the Jefferson Street parking garage. The current balance of subject loan is $79,854.64. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion?
Second.
Second. Okay. Discussion.
Yes, I would just like to ask Mr. Reynolds if he could go into a little more detail about why this is being proposed.
I can have Mr. Asmar can address that, ma'am.
Okay, I think the citizens would probably like to know before we vote. Thank you.
You don't read the news journal? Just kidding.
I'll take the fifth.
Mr. President, council members, as you know, Saturday morning, there was an announcement through the News Journal where Penn Air Credit Union announced that they would like to have the opportunity to open up shop downtown. Penn Air representatives are here today that can speak to the specifics of it. But it's contingent upon several things occurring, as the article stipulated. One is, of course, is to have adequate parking. And so the agreement, to my knowledge, worked out between DIB and Penn Air is performance-based, that if they were to come in and to promise certain amount of jobs in accordance with the incentive policy, they would qualify for reduced or free parking for a period of 10 years, which was satisfactory to Penn Air. And as a result of that, an agreement was reached. That agreement is contingent upon the matter before you for your consideration. In the backup materials, you will note that The 2011 assessment of the Thiessen building generated around $8,800 in property taxes for the city alone. Normally, if an entity of this size could have come in and asked for an ad valorem tax exemption for a period of 10 years, and if you were to multiply $8,800 times 10, you would know it'd be greater than the $79,000 loan forgive that's before you. So those are the specifics and the reasons why the mayor is recommending that we forgive this loan in partnership with the DIB in order to provide one contingency as part of the agreement in order to entice Penair to move to downtown.
Okay, any other commitment, Mr. Ruiz?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I do have some questions. I know I spoke with the Chief of Staff on Friday and was hoping that more information would be forthcoming on, first of all, some financial analysis from the DIB on their new marketing incentive plan, economic development plan. Is this in fact a purchase or is it a lease?
Mr. President, Councilwoman, I would have to ask a representative from Penair, but my understanding it's a lease purchase.
Okay, but a lease in the short term, because it was marketed online. If you Google the Thiessen building, it's being marketed by the Chamber of Commerce, has a link in NAI Halford, and it says it's for lease and not for sale. So I'm trying to balance the considerations here with what you brought up about ad valorem tax and the taxes that are actually paid with what we're being asked to do here by the DIB. And I'm all on board with new businesses downtown and welcome them. And I like Penair. This isn't anything about that. But when I try to stand back and make sense of this and see that in essence it's a subsidy that we're being asked to give here, is the owner participating in this subsidy at all? The owner of the building and this parking incentive that's being given?
Mr. President, Councilwoman, I would have to defer to the Penair because I don't have the agreement that DIB arranged with Penair.
Would a representative of Penair approach the microphone in the center here, please? Thank you. And your name, sir?
Carol Scarborough. Currently, what we are looking at doing, and I don't have everything on the seller side, but as it was indicated there, it is going to be a lease purchase. Our plan is completely to purchase it after a certain period of time. It's basically a financial situation of trying to make those arrangements. As far as what the seller is doing from the subsidies, I'm not familiar what their participation would be in that.
So you don't know the terms of the lease purchase now, how many years you'll be leasing it and then eventually purchasing, or?
As far as that goes, our lease is going to be for 12 months. It's going to give us the time to go through a lot of renovations, a lot of work to get it ready, and then it will be a purchase at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And we're just short on details here. I hope you understand the position this council's been put in. I am 100% on board with businesses coming downtown. And my other questions to find out if the owner participated in this at all during the lease portion of this, so it would be a month of revenues, and that this was also being marketed by the chamber. And from what I understand, and I'll be honest, I haven't been able to peruse every news source, but I don't understand where the chamber is in this transaction, because we as a council spend taxpayer dollars on economic development, and they have a tremendously well thought out and strong plan for 2015 at the chamber, and private investment is what's working in bringing people downtown, and that why are the citizens now being asked to forgive this loan? So it's really kind of a bad situation to be in, that it's forgiving a DIB loan, but how do I justify to taxpayers in District 3, how are they benefiting? You know, we don't have community centers in our district. I don't even have adequate fire service. And here is a general fund expenditure, basically, that we're being asked to give of almost $80,000. That's a huge amount of money when you say it's the general fund that you're looking at. The DIB sits within the CRA. Maybe it would be a consideration for the CRA to somehow participate. But if we're going down that path, I mean, this is a pesky debt that the DIB has that they need to forgive for this deal to work, and I understand that. But if that was the logic, then we may have the luxury as a CRA of calling up ECUA and going, you know, we've got our eyes on that $2 million we owe you a year. We'd really like to use that for incentive. Can you just forgive it? So it's bringing a good situation to an impossible question for a council. So I'm not saying I can't get there. We are just painfully short on details on this, and I'm not quite sure it even sits with me as appropriate at this point, because when I look at free parking, I know just personal knowledge of an accounting firm after the hurricane that rented an entire floor of that building, and parking, they were on their own. There is free parking within a block and a half. There's a free parking lot within almost the same distance as this parking garage that we would be forgiving the debt on. I know they're trying to bring more than 50 people downtown, and I respect that, but I just can't get there today. I need much more information on this, and I did make that clear on Friday that you know, I'm a math person. I need to see some numbers. I need to see the logic in this DIB incentive plan that's been put together, and then also understand how, you know, the chamber and the seller are participating in this as well. So I can't support the motion today.
Thank you. I do have a question for staff, or perhaps the attorney here. If this is not going to be an immediate purchase, or is Penair even eligible for E-date if they don't purchase the building? If it's just a lease, yes.
I was going to ask a similar E-date question. My understanding of E-date is only with improvements to the building. So that 88 number, I've forgotten what units it was, but that would never be E-dated away, only improvements to the building. Is that how E-date works? That's what I remember we did before.
I don't have all that information before me, but I will say that I'm pretty sure that it deals with real property. The transaction, and I'll leave it up to Penair, was I think it's more of a, we were told that they fully intend to purchase this building, and so they would qualify, and I think the gentleman expressed that in the short term, that this lease works for them from a business perspective. So we asked them not, that in anticipation of council approving this forgiveness, we asked them to agree not to pursue an E-date because, as you know, it's critical that we begin to build our tax base, assess values in downtown and the CRA, since we're short in that area. They agreed to do that. So I wouldn't, from a staff perspective, I'm not questioning their commitment. I do believe that parking was an essential and critical part of them moving. And so the mayor moved fairly quickly to accommodate their need, to acquire their approval to move downtown. And so that's why this issue is before you, because basically what we're trying to do is partner with DIB in an economic development and providing some incentives that we would ordinarily on the E-date side supply, but in a different perspective, in a different way.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, I want to welcome Penair, and please don't take this as we're anti-Penair or anti-business. We're very pro-business here.
Not taken.
And we welcome you, and we welcome your employees, and we hope that we can work through this. But I've kind of an attack on the Councilwoman DeWeese, and I'm just not sure that the taxpayers should be the one that have to pay this $80,000 debt. I'm just trying to wrap my arms around that, and I can't get there right now. Is there a representative from the seller side here in the audience? The seller of the building that? Nobody from the seller side. Okay. Does anyone know if the seller has been approached about paying this $80,000 debt instead of the taxpayers of the city of Pensacola?
I'm not aware.
Yep, Mr. Asmore? Not aware. Could we maybe table this until we ask the seller to pay this, table it till next committee of the whole meeting, and let's approach the seller about paying this $80,000 debt instead of the taxpayers of the city of Pensacola?
Mr. President, council member, I would defer to Penair. I think that they have some time commitments that they are trying to achieve, and I think they're in the better position to let you know what their timelines are.
We're currently looking to move fairly quickly. We have some specific needs. At the same time, as indicated, we are committed to, from the lease perspective, we're going to make some major investment in the short term during the lease period. As far as the time schedule, if we're not going to be in a position to move fairly quickly on this, we are going to be in need of going somewhere else to be able to support some of the growth that we currently have in the areas and departments that we're moving downtown.
Sir, I hope you understand the dilemma we're in. We're kind of watchdogs of the taxpayer's wallet
Absolutely.
here. And it's kind of up to us to make sure that they don't pay something that someone else maybe has a little bit more ability to take that debt and pay it. The News Journal today, I read County Commission has a $9.5 million deficit. Just a few minutes ago, we gave away $65,000 or so for giving or reducing the size of some space that we're leasing. I've just got real heartburn with this. I really do. I've expressed that. I called a senior staff member last week that was mentioned as someone that knew about this deal, and he said he didn't. I've told another staff member that I have some real issue with this. I believe that this council should ask the seller of this building to pay this $80,000 debt and not the taxpayers of the city of Pensacola. I feel very firmly about that. I'm actually immovable on that, and I just want to make that very public. I think that we should really go back. We have a gentleman here that represents Penair. He's not sure if anyone's even asked the seller. I mean, if we asked the seller, maybe he would say, sure, let me write that check instead of the citizens of the taxpayers of this city. So until that question's been asked and someone can give me a definite answer that question's been answered and it's been said no, I'm going to vote in opposition to this today. And I might have more to say, so I might use my second time to speak. It was also reported, and I get a lot of my information from the News Journal because there wasn't much here on the agenda that was released, so I have to go back to the News Journal article to refer to. It says that this was the second financial institution that moved to downtown. Did the first ask for any parking concessions? Mr. Asmar, do you know?
Who are you referring to?
Well, it says there's the second financial institution. Did we give any, the News Journal, I'm having to refer to that.
I think he's referring to the Woodbury group.
Because there's not enough information here, so I have to go back to the newspaper article to find out what's really going on.
Mr. President, I'm not aware of any, Mr. Spencer may be able to speak to that transaction. I'm not aware of that financial institution's.
Asking for any concessions that ask taxpayers to pay notes or anything like that.
They haven't approached me or the mayor's office to the best of my knowledge.
Again, sir, we welcome you, but I'm having real heartburn with this, and I'm going to stop there, and maybe I will speak again a second time, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reminded of something Thaddeus Cohen said a few years ago. He actually gave this speech to about 3 different groups in town. One of them was the NAIOP, and the members of NAIOP, these commercial builders and realtors, it wanted to know, well, what's the city going to do next? What are you guys going to do to help us in economic development? And he spent literally a half an hour. Even some of the things that the city had done before he had gotten here, the things that local government, not just the city, but local government had done to assist in economic development, taking down the wastewater treatment plant, a $300 and some odd million investment, the technology park, and the accommodating drainage, very beautiful drainage pond over there at Admiral Mason. And just one thing after another, after another, after another. The CRA invested in, I think it was over $150 million in downtown and things like that. And that it was time for the private sector to start stepping up and doing that. All that said, you may think that I'm going to be voting against this. Honestly, right now, I don't know. But I do want everybody to appreciate some of the points that have been made contrary to this. And I've got Dr. Pratt that wants to speak, and Ms. Dubuisson has indicated she'd also like to speak. Okay, okay. Okay, Dr. Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. Well, first off, this is sort of a confusing one because we're not being asked to approve a bank today, though based on what we understand is the impetus for this, it's because of a bank. So it's hard to separate the two in my head, but one of my questions is how many, in the newspaper article it said that they're going to be relocating from local branches to downtown. How many new jobs from outside sort of Escambia County will be coming because of this effort?
Okay. Our current plans right now, there's going to be just in excess of 50 that will be relocating in the short term. And in the near term, our plans are, from a growth perspective, is to create 58 new jobs.
And if there was not this opportunity, would you still, because of being able to do business in the city and the growth in our community in general, would you be able to accommodate those 58 other new jobs or so in your other local branches, or would those be sort of regional office kind of jobs, or are those sort of just general banking and Pensacola jobs?
I can't say exactly where they would be because based upon where we would go as a result and all, they will be spread. They could be spread out, or they could be housed centrally at a different location.
Okay. And then my question, which I'm hoping someone might be able to answer, is we're being asked to forgive this loan in support of the DIB's Economic Development Incentive Plan. And is this loan going, or the money that they will write off from this loan be used just for this effort, or is it our contribution to their bigger effort of economic development?
Mr. President, Councilwoman, I would suggest and make a recommendation that you earmark it specifically to support Penair's transaction. It is my understanding that this amount of money is going to that, to support that. But for the record, I think it's safe that we could place it on the record and have it earmarked for this particular transaction.
And so you said that as a way to get my support, but that almost loses my support somewhat, because I guess one of my challenges is we're calling this economic development, but we're really just rearranging deck chairs, it seems. Banks are good things, but if we're a growing community, the banks will come. They will want to be here, and so they're also not bringing outside dollars. If this were the regional headquarters for the Florida headquarters for some large bank, that would be bringing dollars from outside into the city, and that I think would be a benefit as opposed to an incentive plan that's focusing simply on bringing jobs to our downtown, which I like jobs downtown, but we don't need to take them from Cordova Mall and bring them downtown. We don't win on something like that. And then also, I guess, with this, from the things I've read about urban planning, not that I will cite that I'm an expert, but banks don't really contribute to the vitality of your main retail strip. So if we were looking to do something, I don't know that a bank is what we as a city might want to draw there. And I just think that almost would lend us to having a discussion on what sort of things do we want to attract downtown. Because based on the Urban Advisory Committee, I know they won't recommend attracting a new bar to that spot. And then the second topic that plagues me a little, and in this one, I think we're just responding to our current culture, but I think that this does raise the issue that I think we need to start talking about how we can create incentives to reduce the parking demand in our downtown. We have so many large lots that are just, sort of polluting our downtown, not in a because cars pollute feeling, but because it just makes for a not friendly, walkable community. And we need to start thinking creatively about incentives to try and keep companies from wanting all this parking. We've seen with the Maritime Park that there were these fears that people would not be able to find parking, but they could do it. People can be creative. And so I came in planning on supporting this today because I was just going to go along with it. But hearing the comments from others, I am thinking that at this point I won't be supporting it, but I still will be open to influence over the next few days. And I believe I was technically the second, so I will then withdraw my second, and I assume someone else will second.
Okay, and Mr. Townsend picked up that second. So, all right, Dr. Pratt, you mind if we move on?
I'm good.
Okay, there's several of you that indicate you wanted to speak, and I
You
don't
just go
remember
around
which
the
order it came in, but I'm going to go here to Mr. Spencer and just work my way around the room.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to express my my appreciation for the comments, particularly that Councilwoman DeWeese, that you introduced the discussion with. Very valid points, and I think that's why many people were looking to you, perhaps, to be nominated for the Audit Selection Committee. But this is first of all, I am in full support of this initiative. But I also want to share that I too feel the complexity. I have read every bit of the documentation that's been submitted. As you know, I sit on the DIB as a council representative, so I have been sitting and participated in the meetings, including listening to public input in the DIB and the venue of the DIB. And I share that just so that hopefully I can gain a little more credibility in this discussion. I sympathize with fellow council members and the discussion, most particularly about the general funding aspect of this $80,000, this request to forgive an $80,000 debt. What I hope I can do is shed some light that will help, that will persuade perhaps council members that initially thought they may support and now are not supporting it. There's some very almost invisible details, unless you are I think as close to this as I am, that I hope I can share. Number one, and I want to hit this while the topic's hot, as Councilwoman Pratt had pointed out, that perhaps parking is an enigma, or our supply for parking is something that we should not be proud of. Couldn't agree more. Please recognize that parking deck is there. We're not removing it. That is very environmentally friendly to invite a company to utilize a parking structure than to otherwise create barriers that would incentivize them to go into the green fields and build new buildings instead of restore historic existing buildings in a high-density downtown urban core. And we are therefore not inducing a company that I heard is going to add 58 jobs. So I really want to emphasize what I heard Pen Air's representative say is, given this opportunity, they are going to be adding jobs. Every single periodical, every piece of media that makes it into my hands reminds me that one of our number one responsibilities is to invite jobs to our municipality. That's why I support this. I also want to point out that what I've been learning about urban redevelopment is, while we may love the cute boutiques and coffee shops and retail stores, online shopping will continue to erode that piece of the pie, whether we like it or not. It is a fact. What a bank or a financial institution brings to discount their power in a community in a positive way, I think, is overlooking what I am learning about urban redevelopment. And that is, if you create and bring more jobs, these being knowledge-based, part of the stipulation for this incentive is a certain salary threshold that they must attain in order for us to do this. These are not minimal hourly wages. But here's the point I want to drive home. While today they may require parking, tomorrow we may incentivize this company to actually become less vehicular dependent, because as their jobs become more concentrated in a walkable downtown, we may have an opportunity to create more housing right across the street at what is now an abandoned campus, which is basically, and pardon me if I sounded disrespectful to Gannett, but the Pensacola News-Journal campus, one of our largest deserts of asphalt right now, of parking, that once was an employment base for hundreds of employees that filled the shops of downtown. That is never returning. Something like Penn Air coming to this building is exactly what can be the precursor to then justify us to come up with greater incentives to produce housing for members of families that will only need one car then, because one of the members is able to walk 2 blocks to their place of employment. There actually is a linkage in this case. Jobs can be the precursor to the housing, which is what we need for downtown. So I really want to emphasize that that's one thing I'm learning, is building cute boutiques and retail stores and ice cream parlors isn't what necessarily causes people to move downtown. It's definitely multifaceted. So I see Penn Air's employees beginning to feel the vibrancy, the convenience, and the excitement of walking to the public promenades and to the nearby other venues and saying, you know what? I no longer want to fight the traffic to come down here for my job. I want to live here. So they're going to further build the tax base for our city. Finally, I want to tell all of you that I became a fan of the president of Penn Air here, David Tuyo. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Yep. He spoke to the DIB. What I heard, fellow council members, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, is someone that is excited about where Pensacola is going. And this individual did not give me the impression that this was a forced hand in any way. And the fact that they are promising and assuring us to not capture the savings through E-Date, I think is, again, another reason that gains my support. What I also know, and I want to share this, Mr. President, as architect, I have watched that historic building fall steadily into a state of disrepair. It saddens me. Perhaps for those of you that just walk by or drive by the building, you can't possibly see what has happened over the years of neglect since Mr. Russenberger sold that building. The current owner, I think, has had ownership for maybe a month. That's not the issue to me. What I did hear was the president of Penn Air commit to purchasing a building that is on our National Historic Register and has recognized that his employees will not be working in a building that you see in its current state. It has absolutely gone for years since Ivan, totally neglected, and I only see someone of the caliber of this company having the financial resources to be able to restore that building to the level, to the integrity that it deserves.
Mr. President, may I clarify E-dates? I pulled up what our thing is, and I just thought it would be good for us to know. An E-date is on, or at least our criteria that they fill out is it only is for improvements and new tangible property if and it has to be over $10,000 in improvements. So the current ad valorem assessment would be retained no matter what, and then any improvements, then you would do a multiplier on that. You could change that. So I just thought for us to know what an E-date would get them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Mr. Spencer.
I'll use my second time, and I want everyone to know that I have gone through that building. I do not plan on being at all involved in any project that Penn Air embarks on as it relates to any renovations. However, I want to let you know, as David expressed to us, those building renovations will be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring that building to where it needs to be. So we will.
Well, the good thing about this discussion is that strategic vision meeting we're going to have late in May. We've already taken care of half of that here today, so.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. Mr. Scarborough,
Yes,
you
sir.
would be doing me a big favor, since this looks like it's probably going to go on for a while. If you just take a seat at that center table there, I apologize about having you stand up there for so long, but
Okay.
that microphone will work just as well.
No, center.
No, sir. No, they're right here in front of you, sir. I'm sorry.
Hot seat.
Okay, yeah. In the hot seat, that's right. Okay. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and really appreciate my colleague Spencer's comments. I really don't want to wear the label of doing something that detract of being a barrier to getting jobs in our city. We have discussed this for some time, and I can recall an issue over on 9th Avenue where we went on the hot seat and we did not act in a timely manner, and what happened, we lost that business and that economic effort. $80,000. $80,000, it's $80,000, and I recognize all of the ramifications of $80,000 and the general fund. But I think when you balance what we got coming here, I think what we're looking at will enhance our future downtown and the things that we're trying to accomplish in terms of getting jobs, people here. So I will not wear the label as doing something that will detract that company from coming here. I am in favor of it, and I don't know of any other comments that could be made that would make me change my mind, especially with the amount of money that we're talking about. So I think we really need to think this out in terms of the economic development that is bringing here and all of the spill-offs that Councilperson Spencer indicated to us. And there's a zeal, I think, and I kind of got the feeling from Penn Air in reading the article about their decision to come here. There's a warm feeling, if I can describe it like that, in terms of wanting to come downtown. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Wu.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, Mr. Scarborough, thank you for being here. We should have started off with that. Anybody that comes before us with offer of a lot of jobs in this economic condition should be given roses rather than been treated, with some harsh questioning. Now, in defense of the harsh questioning, I think that's part of our job, so I hope you understand that.
Absolutely.
There's nothing personal in anybody's conversation, but I want to emphasize how important it is that you're here and how we appreciate the fact that you are here. From what I understand from the figures, we're talking about initially relocating 58 jobs, but over a 2-year period, from my understanding, we're going to be adding over 100 new jobs.
No, what we have is, we'll be initially, with what we have existing, it'll be just over 50 employees that will be relocating, and our projections are that we will be adding in the next couple of years 58 new jobs as we go through renovations and getting the building in order. So we will end up with right around 110 jobs.
110 jobs. And the thing in my mind is not that we're getting jobs down here, which is wonderful. We're getting 110 people who are going to be eating in restaurants downtown. You have 110 people who are going to be shopping in the shops downtown. You have 110 people who will be purchasing products downtown. It's something that really will help the overall economy. I think that what's gone through our distinguished council members' minds when they asked the question is the question of the incentive, is that greater than what's going to be gotten in return? And in doing our fiduciary job, that's what we're trying to come to. What goes through my mind is when you talk about incentive, that's the reason I think Alabama is tearing us up. Alabama has automobile plants, Kia, Mercedes, Hyundai. All three were giving huge incentives. When you look at the steel company that Mobile got, it got huge incentives. I think the question for this council is the incentive that's being offered, how does that balance against what we're getting? And that's, am I making any sense?
Absolutely.
There's no question we want what you're offering. What we want to do is make sure that we're responsible in getting to that point. And so I don't want you to misconstrue any of the questioning as being personal or as against wanting y'all down here. I'm here to tell you we can't wait to have you down here if we can get everything worked out in the proper way. I think Councilman Spencer put it very nicely in terms, we just opened a ballpark. There's an excitement in the city. You add in 100 new jobs downtown in the core. I don't know of any other group that's offering us 100 jobs in this economy. And as I understand it correctly, these jobs are around $45,000 on the average. So we're not talking about $10,000 jobs, $16,000. I mean, where in the world, in heaven's name, are you going to come up with 58 new jobs at $45,000 in this economy? So what I'm saying is we need to balance what we're offering. Now, what I said to the administration was I would be more happy was to phase this in over a period of time. And so as we saw what the growth was, that then we could parallel make in corresponding incentives, if that makes any sense. So rather than give the lump sum at one time, was to see how this proceeded along, and as that proceeded along, then we could go ahead and make adjustments. Now, having said that, I have no problem with what Councilman Johnson said, going to the buyer and saying what part of this incentive will you be able to help us with. And I think all we're doing is our fiduciary duty. But at the same time, I don't want you to misinterpret this as not wanting you to be here. Because I'm here to tell you, if I ran to get jobs, people were telling me their kids were leaving this town. And they wanted jobs. And you're offering us jobs. Not only are you offering us jobs, you're offering us clean jobs. The work that you do in that building creates no pollution. It creates no chemical residue. I mean, it is exactly the type of thing that I'm ecstatic about. So where I'm at is that I don't know how we could get a comparison from our fiscal financial department over what we're offering versus what we're getting in return. And in closing, we don't want you to think the questions are directed to you. I got a call just the other day, and I was very grateful for the call, but the call said basically this is going to happen. And basically A, B, C, D, and E. Well, that's all I had. And when you talk about an $80,000 incentive based on A, B, C, D in a 5-minute phone call, it puts me in a very difficult position. But I am here to tell you that I like what you have. Hopefully, we'll find out that it's fiscally sound what we're offering, because I don't know if anybody else is offering the number of jobs that you're offering us at the wages you're offering. And I'm just absolutely ecstatic, and I hope that it can work out, because I like what you're bringing to us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, Dr. Wu. Ms. Myers, I had said I was going to come around the table, and I'll give you the chance to defer to the mayor. Mayor's indicated he wanted to speak. Would you be willing to defer to him, Mr. Mayor? Ladies and gentlemen, Ashton Hayward.
Council President, you are very kind. Council, how is everybody? I greatly appreciate this moment. First and foremost, I think we all need to remember why we're here, and that's obviously we're here to create the value and the environment for businesses to move into the city of Pensacola. And I think the history shows our reputation in the past has not always shined a great light. And I think we should all, especially the council, pat themselves on the back for what you've been able to do in the last 15 months. And, you know, Pensacola is being looked upon in a different set of light. People want to come to our city. They want to bring their businesses here. We're talking about Penn Air Federal Credit Union. We're not talking about some run-of-the-mill business that's taking a risk in opening. These people are going to create an environment, as Councilman Wu just stated, where there's going to be walkable traffic downtown. They're going to support the businesses that have taken risks to open restaurants and other establishments downtown. We need to continue to create the environment where people want to do business in Pensacola. This is an incredible opportunity for all of you and the administration to have another win under its belt. We were just able to secure $2 million from the state of Florida, from our governor, to put confidence in our port. We all worked hard for that. This is another win for all of you, and we need to change the environment and the attitude that people in the previous years had on this council and at the past administration. We're all working hard. The mayor's office, each one of you council members are working tremendously hard to create value for our community. And this is another opportunity for all of y'all to win and do the right things. There's cities around America that are doing anything and everything to get businesses to our community, to their community. And we need to really look at it and say, hey, this is something that we can win again. We don't create jobs as government, but what we do is create the right environment where people want to come to our community and be successful. So I'm asking y'all that you do support this. You support Penn Air Credit Federal Union. They're an incredible partner in our city. They're sponsoring our stadium. They do amazing things in the community. They want to be a part of this community. And I think we need to do the right thing. So that's all I need to say. I think y'all know where I stand. I appreciate all the service that you do for the community.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming down, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Myers, and for the rest of you that want to speak, I do have Ms. Dubuisson out here that's going to want to speak. So we probably need to wrap this up in the next 10, 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to hear a more in-depth discussion regarding this issue. Initially, I was going to support it. I don't know if I am or not now. At this time, I want you to know that I think Penn Air is a great company, and I'm just really thrilled that Penn Air wants to locate here in the downtown area. I think it's really great. And I hope that we can work something out so that that becomes a possibility or a reality. One of the things that concerns me is that you have a lease purchase agreement. I would rather it just be a purchase agreement. I would feel a lot better about that. A lease purchase agreement, and I haven't seen it, but that makes me a little bit nervous. What if during the lease period, what does the lease require you to do in terms of investing in this property?
As far as the investment, initially the lease does not have any required items as far as that. We are putting in there a cost to us if we do not finish and complete the purchase. The purpose of the lease for 1 year is basically for some financial reasons and tax reasons to do it for 1 year. All I can say is that our plan is some significant, I think we heard some numbers earlier about what the cost would be to do some improvements. And we are going to have to make some significant improvements before we can even start moving some employees into anything above the first floor. We will be putting in significant dollars. And I can assure you, we do not plan to walk away from those dollars.
Okay, I guess that was one of the concerns I have is if it's a lease, can you get out of the contract to purchase it? I wouldn't want to approve these incentives and then you walk away from it. So, I mean, when I heard the term lease purchase,
And I guess if from Penair's perspective, if I can kind of clarify things, what we're looking at is we've been working with the DIB very, very hard in working a program together with them. As indicated, it was a 10-year program that we're working out with them. And then as far as this recommendation that's before you all right now, this is really with the council and the DIB and everything. So that's from Penair's perspective. I'm trying to be a little careful about getting in the middle of that because we're not part of that transaction.
I understand.
At all. So we're really just a third party acting upon that. But as part of that, in lieu of that, we have absolutely recognized the fact that a concession of this stand and this dollar and everything is very significant. And we have absolutely agreed not to pursue the E-date. And so from that regard, we're viewing it as kind of it's a two-sided transaction. It's really, hopefully, in the long run, not an impact. And all, it's just a matter of it going from one side to the other. And so, again, I'm trying to be a little careful about being in the middle of this because
I understand.
we're not that party.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to defer, but I'd like to speak after.
Okay, sure. Ms. Dubuisson?
Yeah, I'll go after Ms. Louise. I'll use my second time.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to share my observations with council. As you know, I attend many meetings. Some of them are the DIB meetings, and I happen to be sitting in the DIB board meeting the day that they passed the policy which would allow any kind of incentive using parking to be created for a 50-plus job situation with a minimum salary range of $47,000 plus, I believe, was their standard. That happened several weeks ago. I was again in attendance when Penair visited with the DIB parking committee, I believe it was, to get approval from that committee, or to make the request of that committee. And at that point, I recognized a real opportunity for this city. I want to make it real clear, I do not have my money in Penair. I don't have anyone that works for Penair. I will probably never even use Penair's banking services. But I am thrilled with the idea that they would come down and look at the Tyson building, Thiessen, however we are going to pronounce it, and that they would renovate it to the level that I heard their CEO describe their commitment to that building. It currently has 2 floors, I believe, that are not usable, and there are many tenants in there. He talked about as they were able to move tenants out, as their leases expired, that they would be moving their business assets inside. He gave a request for 107 parking slots, and I'm a little frustrated that you folks did not go online and use the DIB website to access the actual information of what the DIB approved, because you would find that none of the parking spaces would go to these people unless they complete the transaction. It does not occur under lease. It only occurs at the point that they purchase. And they have 2 years to complete bringing 107 in. It is my understanding after being there, that their plans are to renovate initially the ground floor and the top floor of the building so that they could immediately have an impact on the walkable downtown arena and the public's perception of that building. And they also made reference to service entities and food service additions that would come in that I believe would add another area of richness to the community. So what you're looking at is the very thing that we're paying people tens of thousands of dollars to go around the country and comb to bring to Pensacola, coming to us and say, oh, if we can have parking spaces in these covered parking spaces, and they will be using the 2 garages, they've split it so that it doesn't impact anyone negatively, and we can use your unused long-term parking. $0 coming in right now for these spaces of long-term parking, but we would like to use those. Will you let us do it? Of course the DIB said yes. 107 jobs, bringing in a $9.5 million annual budget influx to downtown, plus the additional ad valorem, which will go in when that building is brought up to a higher grade. It is selling at a higher level than it was originally listed. So you're automatically going to have ad valorem increase. You're going to have a vital 7-story building instead of a dying 5-story active use. I believe you people are looking too much at someone getting a little bit of personal gain that you think is coming at the taxpayer dollar, and I'm looking at it as this is what we've been putting all of our assets together to create. Why would we not just jump right on board and say 107 jobs downtown for $80,000? The people who are taking it on the short side is really the DIB, and they decided it was worth taking it. They're the ones that for 10 years will not be getting that income, and we'll have to create it. This is a mechanism. You don't have money to go out and dangle a carrot. They didn't ask you to go wine and dine them for 5 different trips before they came down here. They are here, the top 4% of the financial institutions of the country, and these people are saying, we want to be in downtown Pensacola. Their addition to our cultural assets that are down there, their support, which they have already shown, will only be larger. They're talking about continuing their exposure through the rest of the community, but bringing this large number here, and this will only be an additional magnet to what we already have going on down. I would sincerely ask all of you who are looking at opposing this to recognizing the true value that this is going to bring to downtown and consider giving them your unanimous support. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes, just
Can I ask her a question?
Yes, you can. I just wanted to say the mayor and his staff got me 50% the way here. Mr. Spencer got me up to 90. You just pushed me over the top for support, Ms. Dubuisson. Well said. You wanted to ask her a question?
Yeah, I did. Ms. Dubuisson, when you were at the DIB meeting the other day, was it the question asked that the seller pay this forgivable, this debt instead of the taxpayers of the city of Pensacola?
The seller was not present, nor was there any representative from him. There was a question raised about that, but I don't believe any information was forthcoming regarding that. But I would say to that, Mr. Johnson, that whether the seller is capable or not, it doesn't change the value of what this $80,000 would bring. So I would ask you to get beyond any personal consideration you have. Perhaps the seller in his exuberance for the sale will give that money to the city in another capacity.
Well, then why wouldn't we ask him? I mean, why wouldn't someone ask that question of him? I can't understand. I mean, he might do it instead of the taxpayers. I think that we should ask that question of the seller. He wasn't represented at the DIB. He's not represented here. And we can't ask him. This has nothing to do whether we want Penn Air Federal or not. I think it's been said we all want Penn Air Federal here. We want them here. I don't know how else to say that than we want them here. We are not opposed. We're not anti-business. We're pro-business. But to ask the taxpayers to pay this debt when no one's asked a very able, capable seller to pay this debt. If anyone would ask that question, I would have thought you would have asked that question, Ms. Dubuisson, that you would have said, why doesn't somebody ask the seller? Okay. As thorough as you are, and as many meetings as you go to, I thought that you would have asked that.
Mr. John, okay,
well,
okay.
All I can report is what was raised at the meeting, and I would say that we were told the seller was not present and no one could speak to that. However, I will say that the Chamber of Commerce and the DIB both represented that they had worked very carefully with Penn Air, and I believe the CEO also represented that they had all worked very carefully trying to come up with the most positive assemblage that they could for the community. And I would expect, I mean, I may be ignorant, but I believe the Chamber of Commerce and the DIB probably would have asked the seller initially, can you do this? Do we really have to go through this political side? If not, I'm just assuming that, though. And you know how the word assume sometimes turns out. So thank you.
Okay, thank both of you. Mr. Geralds.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I've listened carefully this afternoon, and the comments and the questions that have been raised are all legitimate ones. However, I am so looking forward to our strategic planning day, which will be a day that we can iron out and ask questions. And I would also ask that, Mr. President, if you will ask someone to get us a list of some of the types of incentives that are being used throughout the country, and in particular in Florida, so that we have an idea of what we should be doing, where the funds are drawn from, and how things work. And when I first heard about it, and it sounds like a good deal. And to me, a good
As
deal.
far as asking for that stuff, you're going to be the one that needs to ask for that because you're going to be chairing that meeting.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
No problem.
Okay.
One of the things that I would want us to do is to look at, as I was about to say, it appeared at the first introduction as a good deal. And to me, a good deal is one where both parties walk away from the table feeling that they have made some progress. And over the past 12 years, I too have been concerned with the stagnation that exists in the city. And I am certainly aware of our fiduciary responsibilities. I've considered those. But it sounds to me like this is an opportunity for the city of Pensacola to do something on the positive note. I don't think that the $80,000, to forgive the loan of $80,000, would send us into bankruptcy. And therefore, I'm going to support it based on some of the comments that I've heard and what it will do for the city of Pensacola. It sounds like a good deal for the citizens, and it's a good deal for the council to move forward and to put an end to our ability to debate and stagnate. And next week, you know, it's not every day that a company of this caliber will be knocking at our door. And we better open that door. We better answer it, and answer it in a positive way. And the things that we need to work out, those will be the kinds of things we'll need to, now that we know some things that we want to know, we can look at those kinds of arrangements in the future. And as Mr. Johnson has pointed out, when certain things are being negotiated, all of the questions have to be asked and answered. But I think I've heard enough about this that I feel comfortable moving forward with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Weiss and then Mr. Johnson, and let's try to take no more than about 2 minutes apiece, if you could, please.
Thank you, sir. I had a couple questions and then some final statements. Does anyone know the sales price of this property? Ms. Dubuisson mentioned that it was discussed in a meeting that it was selling for more than the asking price.
I didn't say it sold for more than the asking price. I said for more than what it had originally been listed on the tax records. It's an increase. I do not know firsthand, no.
Mr. Asmar, do you know the answer to that?
Mr. President, Councilwoman, as far as I know, those details are private between the seller and the buyer.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm deeply, and this is going to sound dramatic, but I'm saddened and frustrated that Mr. Scarborough, as someone that's willing to come to our community, has been asked to come sit at a deliberation of council when he is party to a private contract with a private property owner, that this discussion, parking is a consideration for anyone that comes downtown. I happen to work in an area that has free parking, and I just park whatever's closest to my office and I walk. But my frustration is that there's no one from DIB here to discuss this consideration. We have a terrible habit of being the path of least resistance, and it's not turning out to be a partnership. It's being discussed as that, and the mayor so kindly came down and expressed his concern about our partnership in this council being supportive of the efforts of the whole, of the private sector as well. So I don't know where in the conversation DIB looked at the math, which we haven't been party to or briefed on, and that's what's very hard, to not get an executive summary here today of what the math is on this. I'm being very careful to say how I can get there to a yes vote eventually. I cannot support it today. There's simply not enough information, and I apologize for you having to sit here and probably have your blood pressure up and have to endure this. This is like when we have someone to come that talks about a ticket in the DIB and they're so terribly frustrated, and we can't do anything about it. And we're being put in this position, and it's sad because you're on one end of the spectrum, and here we are on the other, being asked to forgive this debt with all these complicated matters around it. So what is the subsidy? What is this consideration that DIB is asking us to make? There's no one from DIB here today, and in the future, please protect our interested private party and individuals from this kind of questioning. I don't think that Pen Air deserves this today, and I'm shocked that that you as an individual, but your organization has had to come answer these questions, because it is between DIB and us. So I cannot support it today. I have many questions. I asked many, many questions last week, and there's just not enough information.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I echo that too, and I apologize, sir, that you've had to sit through this, but again, being a watchdog of the taxpayer's pocketbook, I know that we're about to get into pension issues, and for me to sit and have to face 800 employees when we talk about pension issues and pension reform, but yet we give away $80,000 to someone that has the ability to pay this. We all know who the person is. We know who the entity is that's selling this building. I mean, we can dance around it. I don't want to call his name. It was in Pensacola's News Journal. This person has the ability. We had one council person that talked about that Pen Air has the ability to do the improvements to this building. The individual that currently owns this building has the ability to make improvements to this building. But he's not represented here today. He wasn't represented at the DIB. And so we can't ask him the question. No one seems to ask. We've had one citizen come forth and say she was at the DIB meeting and she doesn't even know if the question's been asked. I mean, we're just going to write this debt off to somebody that has the ability to pay it. And I've just got a real problem with that. When we go forward with pension reforms, when we hear of talk about a very, very tight budget and how short of funds we are and how we need to look at ways of reducing cost and possibly reducing services, but yet we can walk away with this and wire it right off this debt. And I don't want the gentleman here sitting before us to think that we're anti-business. We're pro-business, but again, we're watchdogs of the taxpayer's wallet. And I hope that I don't read a press release tomorrow that says that the council's anti-business or whatever, kind of similar to what happened with Occupy, when we had an action and the next day a misleading press release that was released. And I hope that this council doesn't have to endure that spin tomorrow, because that's not what this is about. This is about asking the citizens of this city to pay this $80,000 when I believe there's a seller that has the ability to pay this. And no one can tell me that he's been asked if he would pay that. That's to me, I think that question should have been asked. There was another council person that talked about incentives that the state of Alabama gives. My girlfriend is a lobbyist in Alabama. She's informed me that Alabama has stopped incentives because of the tough economic times that we find ourselves in today, that the state of Alabama has stopped incentives. And I would challenge you to go and find out for yourself on that. So Alabama's not offering incentives today because of their tough economic times. When we talk about giving away $65,000 on a lease, now $80,000 here, but then we go to our employees and ask them to consider pension reform. I think we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. We have someone right now that has the ability to pay this and not the taxpayer. So I'm going to make a substitute motion that we table this until someone asks the seller to pay this $80,000 debt.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, so let's just go ahead and,
Not debatable.
what?
Table's not debatable.
Can I?
Yeah, it's not debatable, so let's just go ahead.
I need to clarify my second, because I'm concerned about saying that pay the $80,000 debt, that the sale be structured to accommodate this subsidy and parking is the issue here. So some financial consideration.
We can't even, yeah.
Okay.
Well, can I amend my motion then to include that language, my substitute?
Just table it flat out. And
Just table it, mate.
Just table it.
Yeah.
That'd be
I mean,
cleaner
that's
to
really
just
what
table
you're
it.
wanting to do is just table it. And so I urge.
Okay, well then, I think I've made it public what I think that we need to do, that we need to go to the seller and ask that he pay this loan.
No, you're debating the issue now.
Okay.
We've got a motion on the floor. So That's what we've got to vote on. Those that are in favor of tabling this, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed to it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the main motion still stands.
And Mr. President, may I?
Yes. Okay, now, Mr. Townsend has pointed out you've spoken 3 times
Okay.
already, so if you...
I was trying to clarify one thing once, but that's okay. I'll pass. It's
Okay,
fine.
thank you. Okay, all in favor? Raise your hands. Okay, so that's 6, I believe, yes. Opposed? Okay. That passes on a 6-3 motion. Thank you all. Okay.
Be fun Thursday. Come Thursday. You think he'll?
Mr. Barker's still in the room?
Think he'll show up Thursday?
Yes. Your item's up next, sir, if Mr. Reynolds will allow you to come forward.
I wouldn't show up either if I didn't have to.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to have Mr. Barker come in to give the financial report for the 6 months ending March 31st, 2012.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, members of the City Council. The 6 months report is, as far as the budget update goes, one of the most important reports, only because it will probably be the last report if any action needed to be taken in order to deal with issues as it relates to the budget. The next item that will come to council will be the third quarter report, which will come to council sometime in the July-August timeframe. So by then, the fiscal year is just about ended. But with that, I do want to mention to council, as I do all the time, that this is comparing budget to actual monitoring. It is not the official financial statements of the city, which is the CAFR. And we continue to see issues dealing with the downturn economy that we've had in the last several years. And we have been watching our expenditures mainly in the personal services area, and interest rates, I think council is aware, is down and continues to be down, and anticipate it to be down from what was budgeted. For the general fund, revenues exceed budget. As you was reported, as the first quarter report, property tax receipts came in earlier. We received 1 receipt, but if you look at the numbers this year, 6 months, you'll see that the numbers are about equal to what they should be through the first 6 months. As has been reported monthly to council and in the quarterly reports, the franchise fees and public service taxes are down about $900,000 or 13%. Sales taxes are down $69,000 or 4.49% from budget, and communication services taxes are down. So that's been a consistent trend. I would hope that on the franchise fees and the sales taxes that we see some improvement over what was budgeted in the summer months, and at some point, probably after the third quarter report, we'll be bringing a resolution forward to adjust our revenues and our expenditures as we move forward. In total, the expenditures, we still have expenditure savings in excess of the revenue downfall. Looking at some of the line items in the departments, just want to point out, and these were mentioned earlier to council too, as questions arose, the legal department, financial services, if you look at their operating expenses, you'll see that they're both over. Those are both results of encumbrances that were made during the beginning of the fiscal year that were carryover items. So when you look at them on a percentage base, it appears that the budget's in excess of where it should be at this point during the year. And then the selective hiring process still continues, and that's where the bulk of the savings are coming from in order to offset the downfall in our revenues. The tree planting trust fund, of course, the expenditures are reported in the general fund, but the council had requested that this be brought out and broken out separately. Interest to date is contributions and interest are $4,200. Expenses and encumbrances are $14,000, and we have an unencumbered balance in that fund of $682,000. Park Purchases Fund is also recorded in the general fund, broken out at council's request. Contributions plus interest income for the first 6 months is $27. Expenses and encumbrances $21,964, and the unencumbered balance is $38,000. Our special revenue funds, local option gasoline tax is down also from budget about 6.5%, or $43,000. But in total, expenditures will not exceed the budget for the year. The library, if you look at that, and in total, they're going to be okay for this year. We know we have issues dealing with fiscal year 13, but the library grant funding, it was late, and so it's not reported. And when you compare it to last year, you'll see that it's zero money we received for the first 6 months, but that receipt will be posted in the third quarter. Stormwater Utility Fund is doing well and represents 90% of what we have budgeted. The golf course expenditures exceed revenue by $23,200 before the general fund subsidy of $55,000. Looking and comparing to prior years, revenues are up by $86,000. And then there's a capital surcharge that we have added in there. It's about $21,000 that we've collected so far this year. And if council recall, that will be paid back to the local option sales tax fund beginning in fiscal year 14. There's a $50,000 expense that will occur each year till 2018. The golf course was closed, as council is aware, for the improvements as part of fiscal year 2011 for the renovations, and that combined with the mild winter's anticipated increased play at the golf course, of course, has increased. Expenditures are consistent with the budget, and the report at the time of writing, the concessionaire had not paid and was behind one payment. They have paid at this point. They paid in April. And so they are current. The Inspection Services Fund is doing very well. Revenues exceed expenditures by $123,000 with no subsidy from the general fund, and the majority of the increased activity is from commercial construction. Of course, the inspection is continuing to watch their expenses, although they are planned to be consistent with the budget at the end of the fiscal year. The Roger Scott Tennis Center total revenues are consistent with budget. Increased memberships we've also seen are slightly above last year, and expenditures are not expected to exceed budget at fiscal year end. Capital Project Fund, local option sales tax revenue is also below budget, about 2.7%, or $71,000. Fiscal year 2011 was the first time, as we moved in the budget, that we adjusted the expenditures as we moved into fiscal year 12. Expenditures are consistent with the budget. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, just like to keep it in front of council that because of the projects that will move forward, we may have to use pool cash at one point. We have not had to do that yet, and that fund balance will be negative at some point as we move forward also. But in total, if you remember, it's a program that's 10 years, and that's how we look at it on a budget basis, although annually we may have these issues of the pool cash and the fund balance being negative. The Stormwater Capital Project Fund, of course, equaled the transfer from the general fund, and expenditures are consistent with the budget. The enterprise funds, as I reported in the first quarter, there were some issues with ESP. As we moved into the end of the 6 months, the expenses and encumbrances were below the revenue and fund balance by almost $1.4 million. We have had lower gas prices, a warmer winter. And that warmer winter has caused, if council will recall, as part of the ordinance, there is a weather normalization feature in the bills, and that has been added to the bills, and it will run through September. The purchase gas adjustment calculation, the 10 cent per CCF, is added and will continue to be added for the next couple of years. We were short about $4 million when we closed the books in fiscal 11. We have recouped through March about $1 million of that. And of course, wintertime is our most sales, so we will not near recoup that much more for the rest of the fiscal year. Gas construction costs have been separated in the financials. If you recall, those costs were from a borrowing that we did of $5 million and then used those proceeds to pay for current construction costs, whereas ongoing operations are ongoing funding for the CNG stations are coming from current operation revenue. And we will be bringing a supplemental budget resolution forward at some point dealing with the CNG stations. I think there's a committee item that discussed where they were, and as those come online, we will do a resolution and bring that forward to appropriate the funds. Sanitation revenues exceeded expenses and encumbrances by $334,000, excluding the CNG refuge vehicle purchases, which are separately identified as in their construction fund. And fund revenues are consistent with budget and exceed prior year when you do a comparison to fiscal year 11. Code enforcement revenue, we had budgeted the rate increase to occur October 1st. But Mr. Moore came forward and let council know that that was not going to be effective for January. So at some point before the end of the year, we will need to make an adjustment with a supplemental budget resolution to that. Also, council was notified that 2 employees were moved over to the code enforcement area from the general fund, and that supplemental resolution will include that also. And currently expenses are consistent with budget. The port fund is also doing well. Revenues exceeded expenses and encumbrances by $409,000. Revenues are above fiscal 11 by $115,000, and those are due to the reasons you see there, all dealing with dockage. Expenses in total are at or below budget, and the port lease payment for the Northwest Florida Cold Storage is still behind. They have paid $100,000. They owe about another $120,000, and the port is still working with them, and payments are coming in for that. The airport expenses and encumbrances exceed revenue and fund balance by $1.4 million. $1.9 million, that represents a principal payment that was made early in the year. By the end of the year, revenue and expenditures are anticipated to meet. I think the council is aware, due to the airline agreements, they will meet at the end of the fiscal year. It's a timing issue that causes this. Passenger traffic actually decreased by 3% compared to the second quarter of 2011. But the airport's making all efforts and expect by the end of the year for that to come back and be positive by the end of the fiscal year. And then our internal service funds, provide services to the other funds of the city, are all in line. But I did want to mention that we'll also be bringing back a supplemental budget resolution. We did it last year in fiscal 11. We'll do it in fiscal 12 to transfer some funds to the local option gas tax from engineering, and that'll be between $300,000 or $400,000 to deal with the fiscal year 12 reconstruction projects. And after those are bid and returned back, that'll be put on that action item for council. Then the investment schedules are there, and there's a debt schedule there listing those. But I do want to spend some time with council on this as sort of a preview for what I'm looking at for the 13 budget as it relates to the revenue that we've put together so far. And these are just projections, and most likely there will be changes to that as it moves through the process of approval from the various departments. But the first columns I want to bring you, yes, ma'am.
I have trouble seeing that. Is there a page in our 96 pages that you're referring to, or is this a summary of it?
It's not. It's just put on my PowerPoint, but I can put that page out there for council or send it to council so that you can review it. The first column is your fiscal year 2012 beginning budget. The fiscal year 2012 current budget is the next column, and that mainly involves your carryover and appropriations that council has made that were not included in the beginning budget. And then your projected budget are my projections of where we will end up at the end of the fiscal year. And fiscal year 13 projected budget is just where we're in the budget process and what I'm looking at revenue and large number summary for expenses. But the first issue I want to deal with is the fiscal year 12 current budget compared to the projected budget. And the first, you notice that we are going to be down, as I've mentioned, on our franchise fees and utility taxes. And I'm projecting about $912,000 down from that, and state about almost $100,000 from the state revenues at this point. And that's all being made up really on that personal services line item, which is about $1,321,000. We've also received preliminary allocation study that we put out, and our allocated overhead, because our expenses are down, we'll also be losing some of that, about $300,000 in overhead to the general fund. But altogether, that is about a 2% reduction from where we started from. Like I say, I hope that we'll be bringing some revenues back in over projection for the summer months, but that's yet to be seen. I'll report that in the monthly and June report as we move forward. But in total, we still end up balanced, and you see that most of the savings do come from the personal services for fiscal year 12. Now I want to jump to looking at fiscal 12 beginning budget, which is the budget the council approved, to the projected budget at this point. And with that, I want to remind council that the debt payment, which shows as a transfer from the tax and franchise fee debt service fund, that no longer will occur. And council, that's been reported to council. But in total, looking at that, we're looking at about a $2.5 million reduction in expenses and revenue. If you recall, we have that one-time revenue of $2,650,000 that we're recognizing in fiscal 12 from the sale of the property to the airport, and another $650,000 that will be recognized in fiscal year 13 of that. But certainly the revenues have not grown, as I saw, EMA between 10 and 11. So my projections right now from 12 to 13 are in line with where I think we're going to end up in fiscal year 12. So very little growth in revenue. Speaking with the property appraiser, he suggested that I use for property taxes about what we saw the loss in value this year, which is about 2%. So those are 2% down. Franchise fees and utility taxes are going to be 2% down from the beginning. And then the personal services operating expenses will be about the same. And the biggest item is the reduction in debt that we won't have. So just want to give a preview to council of that, let you know that fiscal year 12 between revenue and expenses will be fine as I'm projecting right now. Revenue's down, but we'll have expenditure savings, and the 13 budget will be about 5% less than the 12 budget. And with that, if council has any questions, I'll be glad to answer those at this time.
Let's go ahead and ask. You mentioned with the ESP and various adjustments, this past fall we approved in our budget that any, and I'm going to get this wrong, but any capital improvements that we need to do for, like on an emergency basis to keep our system up, will be charged to the users next fiscal year.
That's correct. There was a provision in the rate study that provided that those expenses would be recouped the year after that they occur. So that would be fiscal year 13 that kicks in.
And so how much have we incurred this year? We were told that our system was in dire straits, so I was just curious, how much have we incurred? So we could sort of estimate how much the users will pay next year.
I think that ESP's looking at this year somewhere between half $500,000, maybe 600,000, something like that. Now, in 13, I believe that their preliminary budget that they requested was $1 million for that, which would be charged in 14, and it would stay around $1 million.
But and have we been incurring those costs? I mean, because my understanding was it was on an as-needed basis.
Yes.
These weren't regular maintenance things. These were sort of emergency things. So I just didn't know how much we'd spent of that.
Right. It was to deal with the program that's been presented for council, a couple of years, dealing with the steel pipe replacement and the other pipe, cast iron, that needed to be replaced. And so, as I've said, it's going to be about 500 to 600 this year is what they're planning on. And but their ongoing, I think, is going to be about $1 million that you can count on. It's just getting the program started this year in order to look at that and get that moving is why it's lower this year.
Okay, thank you.
Dick, you mentioned that there was a $100,000 electric bill, some component at the port.
Yes.
It just paid $100,000. So there was a delinquency of $200,000. Explain the characteristics of that. Is that payment for lease or just how did that constitute a delinquency of fees that should have been brought in?
Right. Well, the total that's still owed, and now if Clyde's still here, I asked him to come up. He can probably give you greater detail. But the total that's still owed is $126,000, and past due, which is 60 days, I look at to give them time to pay. Of that 126 is about 75,000, and they had recently received a payment of about 100,000 for that. So that's going to be collected. The council just wanted to know if any port lease payments got behind what they were and where they are. We are watching that, and the port certainly anticipates that to be collected. So it's not bad debt yet. It's just delinquent right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. The next item is to do with the council executive. I don't know if it called anybody off guard, me issuing this memo, but there has been some concern in the community and certainly expressed from this committee sitting as council about finally resolving our council executive. And we've been now almost a year and a half into the new government. We still don't have one. And I'd be extremely reluctant to point the finger at any one person or group of people. And I want to appreciate the work that our advisory committee has put into this. I first talked to Ms. Major about this last fall, and just to see if there was any interest in her playing any role within the council staff at all, apart from the mayor's staff. And not necessarily looking at her being the executive, but just being as part of the council staff because of continuity purposes. I know that Ms. Major does not have some of the formal requirements that we wanted to have in a council executive. However, she's got 45 years experience here at City Hall. And what I was proposing is that we would offer her a 6-month contract, renewable every 6 months up to 2 years, and that the person that we would hire to be an assistant with her might be the person that we're actually looking at to step into that position again. I'll be quite honest with you, and this is really difficult to try to do these types of things out in public when it comes down to personnel issues. I haven't found my candidate. yet. That's just my own personal thing. And I haven't heard anybody pushing, you know, for a particular person, somebody that's jumped out at them that they would like to support. And so I don't have a whole lot of vested interest in this, but I think it's a viable solution to saying that we've got a staff member, somebody that's dedicated to working for us. It gives us a chance to build a framework around her of other support staff. My proposal would be that we get 2 interns to support her, to do the different types of research that the different council members have expressed that they want to do without burdening the mayor's staff. Talk to Mr. Reynolds. They're coming up with a new internship program for the city, which I think we could plug right into with that. And then a couple of people have had different ideas about how to staff, including going to some temporary staffing agency like, or employment services agency, like a Landrum or a Kelly or others for staffing. That's a possibility, but we could also perhaps lower the standards just a bit and work to create our own in-house person. It needs to be somebody that really knows how government works. I know a lot of the very qualified people that have applied here haven't all that much experience in municipal government. It is unique. It's very complex. We do have the port. We've got the airport. We've got our sanitation services and the gas company. It's a very, very complex system, $221 million budget. I know I have tremendous faith in Ms. Major to do this, so I'm just opening this up for discussion. And I don't mean to put you on the spot because I know everybody's very fond of Ms. Major and have had to rely on her for so many different things.
Well, I don't feel like it puts me on the spot. I love Elaine Major, and I've had a good relationship with her for many years before I even became on the city council. Having said that, and I do appreciate all of the work that she does for us, and I had the opportunity to work on a little difficult assignment with her last week, and she was extremely helpful, and I'm extremely grateful to her. But we are the legislative body, and we need the type of support that adequately supports the legislative body of this government. And Ms. Major does not have the qualifications that I'm looking for in a person to do that job. Now, having said that, I would consider the possibility of hiring her to support a really high qualified executive staff person who's had a lot of experience working in government, knowing how government works, knowing how ordinances are written and that type of thing. I believe Ms. Major could be extremely helpful to that person because she does know so much about how the city operates, and she's been here for a long time. I would very much like to consider her in that role. But I think that we need someone with a certain type of expertise that she doesn't have. So that's my.
Okay, well,
how would you address that?
Well, let me ask you this, and if that's the case, we could change the title of it, you know, and leave it up to council's discretion if they want to hire Ms. Major. By the way, her last day here, I think, is June 15th, 16th, something like that, and is that we offer the same terms, you know, 6-month contract up to renewable up to 2 years to be able to get whoever that council executive is up to speed. But she would still be dedicated council staff member. And you could give it whatever title you so desire. You know, executive assistant to the council executive. I don't know if you'd be willing to entertain that or not.
Well, I'd like to hear some more discussion. That's just my idea. I'd like to, and that sounds like a possibility, the idea that you've just put forth. That wouldn't preclude us from continuing to look for the type of person that
you're
that
talking
we
about. That's right.
need.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Now we might have to have Ms. Kuchera weigh in on that, how, because that position would have to be created. Ms. Reynolds, do you mind if she comments?
I don't, Mr. President. I just would say that, you know, regardless of what the council determines in regards to Ms. Major, I would like the ability to brief council at some point on where we are with the role that we have in regards to the council executive search. Because as council will remember, we were charged with ensuring that we had viable candidates to be brought before council, and so we have been working hard. I shouldn't say we, it's not me. Frankly, it is our HR department who's been working very hard in regards to testing as well as reviewing the final candidates that we have. And at some point, you know, certainly not today, unless, of course, this body determines that Ms. Major is the individual that they want, then we'll put that on hold and move forward in a different route. But we continue to remain flexible and want to assist in any way we can to helping you resolve this particular issue.
Well, then, and on that, to our committee, Mr. Townsend, Mr. Spencer, and others that have been reviewing these resumes, and I think have gotten it. No?
The committee sort of was disbanded, and the administration has reviewed them, and I for one, would love to hear where everything is, so. But no,
Well,
the
I
committee
would too.
hasn't done anything recently.
But the question I've got for Ms. Kuchera right now, let's just lay the council executive aside for a moment, is can we create a position that would go into effect before we actually hire the council executive? Because, you know, quite frankly, Mr. Reynolds, I've asked you guys, where do we stand with this? And it's like pulling teeth. It's like, you know, it's hush-hush, it's personnel matters, you know, we can't talk about it. And so, in my mind, is we're still back in January 2011 with this issue. The jobs were advertised last year. We got a multitude of responses. That finally got whittled down to a seemingly manageable number, and I've really not heard anything from you guys. And I've asked specific questions about it. In fact, I won't point the finger by naming names, but said, Mr. President, that is your decision. And not mine, but the council's decision. And so now I'm surprised to hear that there's a little bit of this pushback coming from this, and that we may be headed down the wrong road. I don't know what road we're on, and so that's been my anxiety about trying to get this filled with Ms. Major is the possible first person for it.
And if I may, Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity. Staff has been committed to moving this process forward and assisting this body in whatever way we can. Frankly, part of that is us getting involved in a little more than what I traditionally would feel comfortable with, because we don't have the unanimity of council on exactly what it is even that council wants. But recognizing that every 2 or 3 months, since I've been here, that once again the questions come, well, where are we with our council executive? And frankly, the answer that I have given has simply been, We stand by to assist you to determine what you want and to fill the position. At a committee meeting that I was a part of, where we were discussing the options, it was determined at that point that the committee would like staff to take a stronger effort in bringing candidates forward. I agreed to do that, and once again, in the hope that I could assist this body to get their staff. Since that decision has been made, our staff has looked hard at all the applicants. We've made a review of those that are determined to be most qualified. We've had an opportunity to have them take online testing. We had solicited from all council an opportunity for you to become involved in that particular process. And at this point, we have those results. And I remain steadfast in my wish to help you find your way through these very difficult waters. And I understand that mainly because of the composition of this particular body. And if this body makes the determination that they want to go in a direction that is different than what we've moved forward, I welcome that knowledge, so then we can get you who you need. We stand by, once again, ready to assist you in any way we can.
Okay. Ms. Kuchera, if Mr. Reynolds will allow you to speak, though, is there a problem with us hiring a staff assistant and executive assistant ahead of the council executive?
Well, the mayor has only approved for you to hire a council executive.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, if we've always anticipated of having 2 or more people on the council staff.
Mr. President, if I may, this is very difficult to have staff be involved in, especially Shara. I certainly will be more than happy to answer these types of questions and give you the best answer I can.
Okay.
As it stands now, the mayor has approved one position. Your question is it possible to hire an assistant prior to hiring that position? The answer is procedurally, there's not an issue. I will tell you from an executive's point of view, if I was coming in, I would like the opportunity to hire my own assistant if that was an opportunity. But certainly this body can do, if the mayor is willing to allow that, we can certainly make that happen for you. Procedurally, it's not an issue.
Okay. Well, I would also think that a person coming in as an executive would like somebody on day one that may be on, last 2 months of their contract, and that they could then go out and hire their own person, but there's somebody there ready and able to support them from day one. So, Dr. Pratt.
So, just for clarification, you said that Ms. Major's contract ends June. Is that? I had.
That's the drop
okay.
date.
Okay, because I had not processed that, because I think that until we have somebody who sort of knows where the bathrooms are, it would be nice to have someone, particularly of her wealth of knowledge, available to help. And I understand that an executive would likely want their own or some say in who's helping them, but I think that helping find their way around, it would be nice to have her available. But I would like, as soon as you're interested in doing it, to hear where we are. I don't feel comfortable making a motion about retaining Ms. Major at this point until I know the time frame that the administration has come up with on the potential hires, because I think we all are eager to have somebody there who's going to fulfill what some amorphous portion of what we think they're going to do.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. It would appear to me that inasmuch as they're somewhat desirous of the council to have a staff, how many, 2, 3, or whatever, I think what I've heard here, that the mayor has approved the 1. If we are desirous of 2 or 3, I think it's incumbent upon the president to go sit down with the mayor and iron out, do you have any objection, et cetera, that we staff the council with this many. If there are some issues with that, then you can go back. What is he willing to do as it relates to the council executive or an assistant to the executive or another assistant? But until such time that we know if there's no objections to have more than one person, I think we can go around in circles. So I would suggest that the president go forward to the mayor, sit down, have a look, and they should talk in terms of how we can enhance this government. Okay, let them get together, come back, say the executive assistant and the intern, or whatever the case may be, and then we can go from there. If it's desirous, if Mrs. Merrick can act in interim, I really don't have any issues with Mrs. Merrick. Been outstanding as long as I've been on this council in terms of enhancing all of the things that I feel that I needed. And I think the 45 years experience way outweigh some of those educational qualifications that we have stipulated. I don't think there's any issue of her being able to draft ordinance, research order, do all of the kinds of things that we expect that individual to do. But I still think where we can clear the clouds, if you will, is to have the president sit down with and say, this is where we are, do you have any objection? And then go from there. We got 6 or 7 candidates, maybe they won't, if we're gonna do an intern, but I think it's just almost impossible to get it strung out here right now until we have a legitimate idea as what the mayor, what expectations the mayor have, and let's work together with it.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I can make a suggestion, I think the lack of clarity on this issue is because this body has not determined what it wants. And staff is doing our best to give this body the best staff that we can within the parameters as we understand them. And if this body wants something different, I would simply ask it as a body and not individual desires, but as a body to vote and determine what it is that you want. And then we will do everything we can, including, frankly, I've got no problem sitting down with the mayor and talking to him about it in regards to if there's more than one. The fundamental issue is that we do not know that because you have not decided that.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting, Bill. If this body can tell the president what we want, come to you or the mayor, I don't care who it is, but so you'll have your marching order, say, hey, this is from the mayor, this is what they want, see if you can respond to that. But I think we're riding it. You say the mayor is saying one position. Well, I think from here and here that maybe that we need more than one. So if we could clear that up and share that with you, we got candidates, but I just don't see the big issue and the problem. It took us 2 years to fill a position. It's almost unreal, unheard of. So I think we're all saying the same thing here. So it's incumbent, if everybody got some issues, how many folks we want, what we want them to do, have the president to go talk with the mayor and staff, and then say, yeah, that's fine, and let's go ahead and take care of our business.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Weiss. I'm sorry, Mr. Charleston's first.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I don't know what's going on today. I don't know if I'm not talking as much or speaking as loud as I should, but I kind of recall making that statement several weeks ago, or maybe even a couple of months. And someone correct me if I'm wrong. But in the past, when we needed assistance, and the city manager, under the old charter, and the city manager took care of most of what we're talking about in a council executive. And we must be realistic that even then, under the city manager had at his fingertips staff. He didn't actually perform all of the specialties that we're looking for in a council executive. He had a staff that did it for him. We went forward looking for one individual that could do all of those things, and we didn't find it. We came close with Mr. Scotty Davis in that he had had some city manager assistant experience. That was the only reason that we came close. But if we think or thought at one time that one person can do all of the things under the 5 committees that we use and the enterprise operations, parks, recreation, and everything else that we're responsible for, to find all of that in one individual, as I said, we only came close when we negotiated with Scott and when we interviewed Scotty Davis. The first time around, we had the responsibility of examining 40 resumes. And out of that 40 resumes, there was only one that came close.
Right.
Only one. And in fact, I thought an offer had been made, but under these circumstances, if Elaine can continue to do what she's doing, and Mr. Reynolds has made it clear, he's not clear on what we really want. So there's no point in negotiating if Elaine is willing to take it for 6 months or whatever, to give us an opportunity, and I'm so looking forward to this strategic planning, because then we'll be able to iron things out. I doubt if we'll find an individual who will possess all the skills and traits that we're looking for. I like the idea of having someone brought in kind of an intern responsibility, giving us an opportunity to do a couple of things. If that person, we have an opportunity to evaluate that person's performance, thereby would giving us a smooth transition. But I think we are kind of barking up the wrong tree. If we think that one person can come in and do all the things that staff was doing, not one individual, but staff, and it all sort of came together, and until we can clear up in our heads so that we can clear it up for Mr. Reynolds when he goes back to the mayor, to let him know what we're actually looking for. And what we're asking for may require a team of people, depending on what we're thinking. And it's clear to me, and I'll put it this way, I don't think we know what we want. We know we have an idea, but we don't know how to get it. And if keeping Elaine in her position, allowing us to work out when we do this strategic planning, to identify what it is we're really looking for, document it and send it forward, because we will never come to a conclusion on it today. And I thought you were making a motion with this as a kind of a recommendation to go ahead and at least get it off the table for discussion and allow us to identify. I don't know if we really considered, we talked about one person, and those of us who reviewed those 40 resumes, sort of realized that we didn't see what we were looking for. We didn't see what we were looking for in the additional 12 resumes, and we're still looking. It's like wandering around in the woods with a blindfold. We still don't know and we have not seen what we're looking for.
Part of our expectation is to be able to get a Bill Reynolds or an Al Kobe in here to be our council executive, but we're offering a salary range that's maybe just over half of what they're making, and I think that's a big difference.
And then on the other hand, if we're looking for a city manager type, we may have to raise the salary, but then why would we need 2 city managers kicking things around? It wouldn't make any sense. So staff that assisted the city manager in the research and doing the things that he had to do in order to bring it before us for our consideration, again, it appears to me that we're sort of wandering around in the dark with a blindfold at night.
I haven't gotten to know Mr. Reynolds nearly as well as I want to, and I look forward to developing that relationship more and more. But having worked with many people like Mr. Reynolds, I think that rather than him not wanting somebody of his stature, is that he would actually relish having somebody, a peer to be able to work with and speak the same language. And there's a clear delineation that the mayor has made, of what his responsibility is. And I think that two men like that would be able to honor that.
And I agree with that, and I think that at this point, we need to move forward with Elaine if we can, and then we need to, once we discuss it and make it clear to ourselves what it is we're actually looking for and what our expectations will be. Because until he's clear on what we're thinking or what our thinking is and what we're looking for, he's going to have a difficult time going to the mayor, telling the mayor what it is we're asking for. Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Dr. Pratt.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Oh,
Weed. No,
yep,
no,
sorry,
no,
sorry,
no,
go ahead.
It's
Yes,
Mr. No, it's Mr. Weed.
No.
I'm sorry.
I just have to step out in a few minutes, so, and I appreciate that. I've been waving for quite a while. I support Ms. Major in the 6-month intervals. I think it would be terribly irresponsible of this council to lose all that institutional knowledge and not convey it to someone, whether it be another assistant position that is able to come in and shadow her. That's what I had always contemplated. I know in my tenure as president, the help that Ms. Major provided and the insight and just the knowledge, the background information on things. And, if we did that contract as an executive assistant position for that. But I do recall our last discussions that we had 2 separate jobs advertised. One was still for the executive and then for assistant position, and we said we would see what we get. We don't know, what to ask the mayor to approve until we see who's willing to work with us. So I don't think that we need to go back a step saying that we don't know if we can have 2 people. That conversation has been had, and we can go back into the tapes and find it, or into the minutes and find it. So I don't want to take a step backwards on that. I do support her in 6 months contracts, but also continue our search for an executive at the very same time and try to bring that to fruition. Like Dr. Pratt said, let's talk about who has applied and move forward. We're not going to find the perfect person, but
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm feeling frustrated. I
am too.
When we went through this last summer, there were some good candidates. There were some who I was cheering for who then dropped off because of the salary change. But I was ready to just go ahead with somebody, because at this point, we don't know how I can't figure out how each of you will interact with that person. I don't know how each of you interacted with Mr. Kobe when he was here, or how you speak with Mr. Reynolds. And what we need is someone who can help us understand how we're going to use them and offer options for ways they can serve us. And I kicked myself that last fall I didn't push a little harder to see if we could have gotten Mr. Kobe to stay on for 6 months, because he would have provided a good somebody to throw darts at, and he was okay about being thrown darts at. But can't do that now. But I think that it is important for us to follow through on the process that's been started. Get someone. There were applicants. I looked at the applications that seemed like, this person could pull this off. They can help us at least get through and figure out how we're going to use them. I think that putting Ms. Major in that position would be a mistake. I like her, I respect her, but I think that would limit. I don't call her with policy questions. I don't ask her the kinds of things that I would ask Mr. Kobe, and I don't ask Mr. Reynolds the same things that I would have asked Mr. Kobe, simply because of the split in our government. And I think we need someone who's looking out for the council. Today there were a lot of questions that people had. Wow, if we had had this information or that information, that person could be out there sort of saying, wow, okay, let me make sure you have that information. And Ms. Major, in conversations I've had with her, has said that that's not what she does. She does a good job in her niche, and it's great, and she could probably expand a little, but those aren't the things that I think would interest her. But I think that whether the mayor agrees to an extra person or not, or whatever, Ms. Major currently provides a essential function for this government. If we didn't have her, who would be the person that the council president worked with, or who would be the person writing all of those things? If she leaves without being replaced or transitioned, there's going to have to be somebody doing that. And so I would think that we can express a sense of the council that we would like to work however we can to keep Ms. Major because of her expertise until such time as our staff person that's going to be the executive is in place and is ready to hire their own assistant. I think that would be the most sensible thing. I think the mayor would try to be reasonable on demands on the staff on the 7th floor, and I really want to follow through on the process we've got going on and get somebody who can function. And I don't think it needs to be a city manager. We don't need some way up person. We need somebody who can do a decent job and help us define this, because we don't know what we want, because we don't have a way of communicating about that. And the only way it wouldn't be communicating about things we're going to vote on, but communicating through that person on what we need from that person. And they would be able to help us figure out what their role needs to be. Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds, would you, for when the mayor gets back from his trip to St. Louis with Mr. Spencer and others, that Mr. Townsend and Mr. Johnson and I will not be going on? Could have talked to him about it on this trip. But when he gets back, would you get us a sit down with you, me, and the mayor on this issue? And I can get my initial briefing from you on this, on where you stand on this position, and bring up my concerns and ask the mayor for a second position as well, that somebody like a Ms. Major can fill.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. Just give me a call, and my schedule is probably much freer than yours is, so, whatever's going to get this done soonest. All right, Mr. Geralds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to throw in a comment that when you do sit down and talk with the mayor, just let him know that we've already interviewed Ms. Majors.
Okay, right, okay, good. Yeah. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, all I say is I'm going to support, Ms. DeWeese made a lot of good points, and I support her thoughts on it. I'd like to, if we hired somebody in 3 weeks, there's a lot of knowledge that Ms. Major could pass on to that person that of the going-ons here and how things operate, procedures, et cetera, that I think are invaluable, and I hope that she would be able to pass those on. So I would think it'd be prudent to offer her a 6-month contract until we can find somebody. I'll support whatever the majority of this council decides. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, we quite literally within 2 to 3 weeks can have a slate of 5 candidates in front of you.
Okay.
I just need thumbs up.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up.
Let me be more clear.
Should we do a vote on
Yeah,
Let me be more clear.
Can I see a show of
What I
thumbs,
need,
please?
what I need is the voice of the body, not of individuals.
May I then make a motion that we ask the administration to bring us a slate of candidates for our next meeting, or as much as they can finagle that? And
You can do that, but I don't think it's necessary. I think
Okay.
Mr. Reynolds said his word. Yeah.
You're okay with that, without a motion? Or you
I
want a
think
motion?
it'd be cleaner if we have a
Let's just
motion.
You want that motion?
He says he wants
Make a
it.
motion.
I move that we continue with the process of the candidates who were considered, who just went through the interview, or the online assessment, if they can bring us back a slate of candidates for our consideration next time, and and they can amend it, whether we're supposed to be interviewing them or whatever the time frame is, but move forward with that process on as fast as we can.
I second that motion.
As fast as we can, that's pretty clear, yes.
I know you didn't expect discussion, but on that word amend, does that provide them the opportunity, much in the spirit of what Councilwoman Pratt said earlier about perhaps there's others, but what if they have someone that, since this has gone on for so long, that shows up in the next 2 weeks? I don't want them.
Was that my offering to let them amend is just, I think they have in their heads a process, and whether next time we would be interviewing them like we did previously, or they would just present us with the final list. That's what I meant. Just they've been going on a process. I want to finish that process.
I'll vote to support you on that, but to me, it's not your motion doesn't make it any more clear than if we didn't have the vote at all. Is that... would
you like for me to make it a clearer motion?
Sure.
That we have...
So you got a definite date and what the process is.
Okay. I'd like a list of candidates by the next committee meeting, if that's feasible, and the interview schedule that we will follow to select from that list of candidates who have gone through the review process.
That's clear.
We can have that ready. We have it ready now.
Oh, you have it ready now?
Well, but the motion is just a list of candidates. Right.
Okay.
That they have.
Well, okay. And I just was hoping to expedite it as much as we can. So.
But if you've got them now, how come we haven't seen them?
Because just yesterday, we finished, was it yesterday? No, Friday? When?
Friday.
Okay. Friday, we just finished the online analysis that we had sent out to all council members, and then had the 5 candidates that we currently have finished up that online assessment. So they're available.
Okay. What would be the normal process at this point? What did you think we would do to follow through that process?
Well, I think what we are going to bring are 5 ranked candidates for you then to interview, is what I would think.
Right. Okay.
Unless this body decides it wants to do something different. And I guess that's what staff is trying to determine.
Then can I make my motion be that we interview these 5 people next time? Does that clarify?
Well, next time. I don't
Next
know what
committee meeting, right, in time for the next committee of the whole? Is that a feasible time frame?
Yes.
So we will interview them by the next committee of the whole.
Before the next committee of the whole. Okay. That's fine.
Okay. I'll second that motion.
Now I can see Mr. Reynolds' frustration and what he means by coming together as a body. It's just tough for us to even get together on this, much less the bigger issue. And I wished I had an answer. I wished I had a magic wand to get this body to gel. Not everybody necessarily to think alike, but to get it to gel together a little more. But it's, yes, ma'am.
Well, Mr. Reynolds, I think what I heard him say is he wants us to, as a body, he wants some direction. And that's why I think the motion is valuable, and I think we should support this motion and move forward so that Mr. Reynolds will know what we want. That's what he's asking us. That's why he wants, I think, is more comfortable with a vote on a motion than just somebody saying, go do this. So I support the motion. I hope everyone will support the motion so we can move forward with this in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, well, let's call for a vote on this. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. We're back to the Audit Selection Committee. And here's what I'd like to recommend is that we pass the recommendation as the mayor gave But Ms. Weiss.
I need to bring something up to council because I am honored to be nominated by Mr. Townsend, and I know that you would trust me with my finance background to be able to do this. But I think it's been 39 years that this particular firm has audited our city. And I don't know how many people are responding, and if my husband's former firm that he was a partner in will be responding to this. But I want to make it very clear that I don't want that fact to cloud your decision-making process and your decisions, and in any way bring any negative connotation to that process.
Who were the three that were at the pre-briefing? Weren't there three firms that were?
Mr. President, members of council, there were three firms that responded: Salt Marsh, Carr Riggs, and Ingram, and I don't recall the third off the top of my head. It was not O'Sullivan, if that's who you were asking about.
Okay, it closes the 3rd, right?
Excuse me, ma'am?
The RFP closes on the 3rd of May.
Correct. And it's not a required pre-proposal meeting, so you could respond and not attend to that meeting.
Okay.
I'm concerned about that. I know that, I mean, it's coming up on 8 months that he is no longer a partner with O'Sullivan Creel. But I don't want that to cloud our decision. The audit is such a delicate matter to begin with. We need to maintain independence. This needs to be council's process and council's decision. I'm still concerned about the makeup of the committee. I think that there should be 2 council members involved in this because it's such an important decision to make. This is new territory because we haven't had to bid this out in the past, even with the city manager form of government. So I just want to put that out there up front, and I'm not inclined to accept the nomination because of that. I think there's very many qualified council members that can do this and not bring that question into this conversation and into our decision. So I would like to decline, and I thank you, Mr. Townsend.
Councilwoman, thank you, Mr. President. Councilwoman DeWeese, I hope you would reconsider. I think your honesty and integrity is beyond reproach in this body. I personally, and I think I speak for the rest of us, have the utmost confidence that you'll do the right thing. And that's what you want the audit committee to do, is the right thing. So in light of what you said, I still have the utmost confidence, and I wish that you would reconsider from withdrawing.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 2 pieces of information that staff has provided me in the interim since we've last talked about this. The first is that report of the Finance Committee meeting of March 5th of 2007, where it looked like the subject was the external audit selection process. And just for a matter of history, the recommendation to that committee, which ultimately was acted on by council, was that City Council establish a process to select the city's external auditor by having a selection committee consisting of the Director of Finance, 1 staff member, 1 member of City Council, and at the discretion of the City Manager, 1 citizen. This is what has been done in the past, with the exception that obviously under the form of government change that you've had, is that the City Manager's responsibilities ultimately become the mayor's. The second piece of information is looking at the City Council policies under in service and contracts. 3.10, the city shall utilize the request for qualifications procedure for external audit services. An audit selection committee appointed by City Council shall present a recommendation to City Council for approval. So what I think those 2 pieces of information establishes this. 1, it's the council's decision, and 2, what staff has brought before you today is essentially what has been brought before you in the past.
Okay. All right, I'd like to go back to, would you read your recommendation, please, again, for that? I can read it for you. That City Council appoint a council member representative to participate in the audit selection committee.
Correct.
Is there a motion?
I thought there was a motion on the floor.
It was pulled. So Mr. Gerald just made that motion.
And the motion, repeat it, please, I apologize.
Okay. That City Council appoint a council member representative to participate in the audit selection committee. Let's go ahead and if you want to vote on that, and then we'll decide on a member for it. Okay?
Great.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Townsend seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Now we need a council member to step forward.
I just wanted clarification. I think that it might be appropriate, maybe later, to have a motion that the council appoint the citizen as well. Would that be an appropriate motion as well?
Yeah, but it does handle that separately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
that's,
deal with this.
that's fine, I'll
Okay.
deal with that, but I just wanted to check.
Okay. Okay, who's willing to step forward here? Who feels qualified, wants to do it, has a desire to do it?
Oh, crap.
I would like to nominate Councilwoman DeWeese if she will reconsider.
Second.
Okay, so, see, I just don't think you have
Okay.
much choice in this,
All in
okay?
favor?
Well,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So you're it, that passes unanimously.
Like the architect.
Okay.
I wanted to be an architect, remember? I'm the frustrated architect.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds.
I just
you
ended
got
up in
Mr. Weiss.
finance.
Okay. All right, now, we've got a couple information items that'll be coming up that be for public hearing on Thursday night. This library planning task force, it's got 3 stars beside it.
That just means it was revised, sir.
Okay, gotcha, okay. All right.
The other one is.
Okay, now, as far as the consent agenda goes, I don't think, if you guys really want to do the consent agenda, I guess we can. There's 2 items on it. That would be item 1 and 2. Award of bid on the port maintenance dredging project and then the audit selection committee, which has Ms. DeWeese. So,
Move the approval.
move to approve those 2 items. Okay, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And so for the committee report, we'll have the Healy Works Agreement and the Downtown Improvement Economic Development Incentive Program.
And the motion
And-
for council executive, right?
Pardon?
Didn't we take a vote on
But
the
that might be
council
just an
executive?
internal motion, or?
What's that?
The motion for,
No, we don't need to report that out.
We don't?
Yeah,
Okay.
no. So, let's see here. Committee of the Whole agenda request and council request of the mayor's office.
I don't have a request yet, but I just wanted to let council know, because I know so many of us, I think all of us are, interested in complete streets ordinances. And Fairhope is the first city in Alabama to adopt a complete street ordinance. And I went over to Fairhope yesterday to see what they're doing, and it's really awesome what they've done with their downtown streets, with the bicycle lanes and the parking. They've put in a lot of handicap parking spaces, and at the right locations. They've fixed their curb cuts, and it just coincidentally, it happened to be Earth Day, an Earth Day celebration going on in Fairhope yesterday, and it was awesome. And I got to meet some of the people. The Complete Streets people, movement people, had a booth set up. So I got to meet them and talk to them about how they went about getting a complete street ordinance. They have, by the way, a smart code group there that they also work with. They had the ordinance for 2 years before they ever did anything. And actually, the person who helped them design their complete street design for the downtown area is from Florida. Dan Burton, I don't know if you know him or not. He's from Tallahassee. Do you know him?
Sounds familiar.
Dan Burton. But I thought it was interesting that they had somebody from Florida come down and help them design what they were going to, how they were going to transform their downtown. So if anyone has an interest in how a street can be greatly transformed to accommodate bicycles and pedestrians and make a city more walkable and, quite frankly, attractive, I would highly suggest just taking a trip to Fairhope and looking at the downtown area and what they've done there. And the people who've been involved with developing the ordinance there and the plans said they would be glad to come here and share the information they have with our city council. Not everybody in Fairhope is in favor of their complete street design. So a lot of it has to do with educating people as to the benefits of complete streets and smart code and that type of thing. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I don't have a copy of their ordinance. I'm going to get a copy of it. It might be something we might want to look at and kind of see how we can do it.
Thank you, Dr. Wu.
Thank you very much. I'm going to make a request, if I could, of the city administrator to look into a matter that I was made aware of driving down to council. I received a phone call from Kim Howell, and she expressed concern that she found out that there was a contractor that's modifying a single-dwelling house to accommodate 5 units. And within the 5 units, there is no limits, from what she understands, on how many people can be in one of those units. And we're talking about this occurring in a regular family, single home residential area.
Well, there's allowed to be up to 4 unrelated people living under the same roof in a single family structure. And 5 would be past that. I mean, that's part of our city code. Okay. And there are a number of people, I guess, because of the lack of housing at a particular level. I've known some people who've transitioned from pretty impoverished situations and getting back on their feet that have moved into homes like that. Typically, they'll have 3 or 4 separate bedrooms, a common kitchen, common living area, and we happen to have one of those in my neighborhood. And there is some concern that I've heard from different people around town. One of the guys that I've assisted over the last 2 or 3 years has been in about 5 of those homes. He transitions in and out and in and out, and I know that it's not an ideal situation, but the way our city code is right now, it's allowable. I think 5 is excessive, and so she may have some relief there. But
well, if I could have Mr. Reynolds report on what
Yes,
the
sir.
code is,
Mhm.
and then we can go from that point. But the people in that neighborhood are quite upset because they're seeing, the potential value of their property go down, so. Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you. I'll make mine quick. And I see a reporter still in the room, and I just want to make it real clear, and I want to make a request. I'm going to run this by the city attorney here publicly before I do, but I want to make it real clear to the reporter and all in the room that I'm pro-business, that I want Penn Air Federal here. I can't stress that enough, that we want them here, and this wasn't, the issue today was not about whether we want Penn Air Federal here or not, whether we want the jobs here. I definitely do. I can't stress that enough, and I hope that that's reported accurately. But what I want to request from staff, and Mr. Messer, you can step in and tell me if this is appropriate. I would like to have the question answered if it was asked of the seller. to pay this loan that we've been asked to forgive. Is it appropriate, Mr. Messer, that this is reported out by name Thursday night? If this reported out, if this entity was asked to pay that, yes or no, is that appropriate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm requesting the mayor's office report out before that vote so that the citizens, the people that have contacted me about concerns about this, that it can be answered publicly, that the question, if the question was asked and what the response was.
Mr. Spencer. I just want to inform fellow council members that I'm currently registered and not through using any city funds or anything like that, but I have a professional affiliation, or my profession. Many of those in the field of architecture are members of Congress for New Urbanism, and their annual conference this year is in Miami, and I have signed up to attend that on May 9th, and signed up for as many pertinent seminars that I felt were applicable to some of our initiatives, as well as our strategic long-range plan that existed pre-Council Representative Spencer. So I hope to bring back some helpful tips, like what Councilwoman Myers has done after her visit to Fairhope. But I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
There's a difference between Fairhope and Miami. We should pay your way. I don't have a problem paying you.